Am I the asshole for flirting with 19-year-old girls at a birthday dinner and defending myself when they called me a predator? Original post. I'm 31 and recently ended a long-term relationship. I was broken. I recently went to this cool restaurant bar downtown with one of my buddies to have a good time. Anyone of any age can come in. While we were there was a girl who was celebrating her 19th birthday. They sang happy birthday and they were allowed an outside cake with 19 on it. The birthday girl was pretty, so I wanted to go chat her up. Her friends were super cute too. My buddy told me to leave them alone and that they looked like babies. He didn't want to go over at first, but since the breakup, every other woman but my ex has been invisible. So he went to Wingman with me. We walked over and wished her a happy birthday. I thought things were going well and the women were laughing. Then all of a sudden one of the girls snaps at me to take a fucking hint, R. Kelly. I was taken aback and just said, "Excuse me." She said to read the room and that they were uncomfortable. Another asked us to go away. I was going to go, but I was really bothered by the R. Kelly comment. I said it's fucked up to call me a predator when we are all adults here. My buddy wanted to leave, but I stood my ground. The birthday woman said that it didn't matter, it's weird for someone my age to hit on them, especially when they make it obvious that they are uncomfortable. Then made another R. Kelly comment by asking if she looked like Aaliyah to me. Which upset me again. I apologized for making them uncomfortable, but that didn't give them the right to call me a predator. One of the women said it was a personal problem. I said that adults are allowed to hit on the adults. It's not a crime. One woman just asked why I was still standing there and yelled at me to go away. I was pissed off, and when I left, their entire table was singing Remix to Ignition and laughing their asses off. I was furious and humiliated. When we sat back down, I was seething. My buddy said that it was my fault for not seeing the signs that they were uncomfortable. To him it was obvious, so he wanted to go. He called me delusional. I pointed out that they were laughing and he said it was just uncomfortable laughter. I told him that I had every right to be mad about being called a predator when they were all 18. 19. It's a horrible accusation to make. My ex was 6 years older than me. He said that they weren't calling me a predator, just weird for going for teens. He said it was wrong of them to sing after me and that was bullying. But I should have left long before that. I felt like he should have stuck up for me. Was I wrong for sticking up for me or for hitting them in the first place? I was respectful and not creepy at all too. Edit. For the record, I do date women my age and older. This was the first time I approached much younger women. Edit. Alright guys, I get it. I let my pride get in the way of things here. Can't fix it, we'll do better next time. Relevant comments. Comment 1, YTA. For being creepy, not taking a hint, and arguing about it to women who asked you to leave. You're upset about being called a predator but don't seem to care that your inappropriate behavior made a group of women in public feel uncomfortable. Comment 2, typical nice guy. Comment 3, the table singing Remix to Ignition was also hilarious and how badly it pissed off the OP. Comment 4, he is extra YTA for standing his ground when they asked him to leave. What did he think would happen? They would admire his persistence and realize they were wrong all along and he was actually a nice guy who they should all sleep with. Comment 5. Or they all look sheepish and he could leave like a boss having owned all those bitchy women. Comment 6. Then the entire restaurant would clap. Comment 7. And all the women would throw their knickers at the clear alpha male. Comment 8. YTA. The fact that both the girls and your friend easily recognized that it was creepy to hit on her, should tell you that it wasn't okay. Comment 9. The rare moment that an AITA post turns out to be the asshole. Praise be. Comment 10. YTA, you're 31 hitting on a 19-year-old, and you can't confirm how old the other girls were. Probably around 17, 18 and 19. That's very creepy and you made them uncomfortable and then didn't take a hint, then got mad when they had to be mean to you for you to go away and you still didn't go away. This is predatory behavior and I'm not really sure what you thought was gonna happen. Posted by Noi. I have never had a Reddit account before, but my journalism TA showed us it and sometimes I'll just check the front page for news. Earlier I saw a post up there that basically described my birthday dinner like 3 weeks ago. At first I didn't gaff, but now I just felt the need to clarify a few things. Even though I know most people called him an asshole. Some people got aggy about the R. Kelly comment and singing Ignition. Was it mean? Yes, but I'm done being nice to creeps. This was not a bar. It was a bar and grill, but it was mainly a restaurant that just happened to serve drinks. We were sitting near a family. So we weren't in a setting where people go to get hit on. We were minding our business and marketing in the corner booth. He came and wished me a happy birthday. I said thanks and we all went back to our conversation. I did appreciate being told happy birthday. But he stuck around. We laughed uncomfortably and went back to our conversation. He stuck around and kept interrupting us. Each time he said something, we nodded and then turned our backs to him. We said thank you bye a few times. But he was still standing there, talking to us. His friend kept finding excuses to leave. I was annoyed, uncomfortable, and disgusted, but I gave him a respectful, "Okay, have a good night. Here's some cake for home bye." But he grabbed the cake and sat down in our booth. He said, "The nights are not over yet." Then my friend just snapped, and if she didn't I was going to. When she called him R. Kelly, she wasn't accusing him of being a pedo, but a creep. 30-year-old guys who hit on us creepy and disgust us, point blank period. We were nice the entire time and I even gave them a million hints and cake for the road. His friend was even finding reasons for them to leave. Then he had the audacity to stand there and fight us on it. I told him that he was way too old for us and it was creepy from the start. When he left we started singing Ignition among ourselves, not singing it after him. AITA throwback that our parents put us on. Instead of crying over our night being ruined by a creep, we turned it into a fun moment with karaoke. P.S. When he asked us our age and gave us his, we became a million times more uncomfortable. Guy was 30 trying to get with 18-year-olds at a birthday dinner. We're used to old men bothering us and it's always gross. To the if he was an ugly crowd, he was a decent-looking fit guy. If I never met him, I'd set him up with my aunt. But he was in his 30s and that is way too old. This isn't porn, and I haven't met a single girl desperate for a 30-yo divorce dick. Being called legal is demeaning. Everything about it was sickening. When we came over, announced his age, then asked us ours, I almost yacked. It was like he was IDing us, at a family restaurant. Fuck outta here. I'm tired of having to be polite to guys who are creepy and disrespectful. Edit, 30-year-olds aren't gross by being 30. Everyone gets older. 30-year-olds who bother you to flirt during the birthday dinner are. Edit, I really appreciate the support, but please don't spend your money on gold for me. That's not why I posted, but I do appreciate it. I discovered my fiancé and my sister in bed together during my engagement party, and my parents asked me to stay silent to protect her reputation. I am a tenured professor at a large northeastern university, 42F. Since I'm still processing what happened at my wedding and, to be honest, I need some perspective, I need to explain what happened. Let me first briefly explain the dynamics of my family. Lisa, 38F, my younger sister, has always been our parents' favorite. Lisa entered the media industry and became a local TV personality, while I spent years conducting research and writing articles for academic purposes. Our parents were always telling me how successful and gregarious Lisa was. The partiality was brutally evident when I was growing up. Our parents paid top bucks for Lisa to enroll in theatrical classes. I was told to use what we had when I required equipment for my science projects. All our lives, this trend persisted. The only person who really encouraged me to pursue my academic goals was my dad's mother, my grandma Martha. "Elena, you have a gift in your mind," she would often tell me. "Don't allow someone to make you less bright." While my parents were occupied watching one of Lisa's TV segments, she joined me in celebrating the publication of my first research paper in a famous magazine. After putting a lot of effort into my job, I became one of the youngest female professors in my field. Even though it wasn't the life my parents had in mind, I created a life of which I was proud. Then, during an academic meeting, I met David, 44M. He was pleasant, intelligent, and seemed to have a unique understanding of me. After 2 years of dating, I was ecstatic when David proposed. How did my folks respond? "Well, at least you won't be alone with your books anymore." Even more telling was Lisa's response. With the same patronizing grin she had had since she was a young girl, she exclaimed, "At last. I was concerned that you wouldn't meet someone who could cope with your intensity." The celebration of my engagement took place at my parents' home. Lisa insisted on assisting with the arrangements, but her idea of assistance mainly consisted of offering suggestions that were more in line with her preferences and criticizing my selections. She began to visit our home regularly, particularly during my work hours. I assumed she was simply acting in her typical domineering manner. In retrospect, there were a lot of warning signs that I decided to overlook. The way Lisa would enter a room and David's gaze would follow her. How she would laugh at his jokes and touch his arm. Lisa started coming to our neighborhood at the same time that David was spending more and more late nights at the lab. I recall the final instance of normalcy before things went awry. I was standing in the bedroom from my early years, examining old pictures hanging on the wall. Several glitzy photos of Lisa were hidden below my graduation photo. It seemed appropriate, a fitting illustration of my role inside the family. However, what followed? Things took an unexpected turn at that point. Downstairs, the engagement celebration was in full force, and I became aware that I hadn't seen David in a while. I told myself he was probably just making a work call, so I went upstairs to look for him. I heard noises coming from my former bedroom at that moment. My hand was motionless on the doorknob while I stood there for a while. I opened the door even though I had a sneaking suspicion of what I would discover. David and Lisa were entangled on the bed where I grew up. I had spent many evenings studying for my PhD qualifications in the same bed. Lisa lacked even the grace to display embarrassment. "Oh, Elena, you should have known," she continued with that same condescending grin. "I always manage to achieve what I desire." The worst thing. Richard, 40M, a prosperous real estate developer, was Lisa's husband. While his wife ruined my engagement, he was gone on business, most likely closing another $1 million deal. I can't really recall what transpired next. In some way, my legs carried me down the hallway as I backed out of the room. David's voice carried that false sincerity I now knew all too well as he called after me, "Elena, hold on. It isn't what you believe." However, it was precisely what I had assumed. Before my parents caught me, I had already gone halfway down the steps. My expression must have told them everything. "Elena, sweetie, please don't make a scene," was my mother's initial statement. "Consider your sister's union. The marriage of my sister. Not the broken engagement I had. My heart isn't broken. The marriage of my sister." With a low, anxious voice, Dad joined in. "You are aware of Richard's fidelity issues. A prenuptial agreement exists. She might lose everything. Elena, please consider the impact this would have on the family." The family. The same family that had prioritized Lisa's needs at all times. The same family that had disregarded my accomplishments, disparaged my decisions, and now demanded that I shield their golden kid from the repercussions of her own behavior. I passed them and entered the crowded gathering. When I walked in, the room fell silent. They must have noticed something in my face. David came up the stairs, buttoning his shirt hurriedly. Her flawless makeup was a little smudged a few moments later. My voice was unusually steady as I continued. "I apologize, but the engagement is off. I have to go, but please enjoy the food and beverages." Whispers and gasps began instantly. Behind me, I could hear my mother's shoes clicking quickly on the floor, but I continued. I went outside to my car after grabbing my keys. David was beckoning me, demanding an opportunity to clarify. Mom was crying for commitment to the family. Lisa watched from the doorway with the same angry smile, strangely mute. I packed up everything that belonged to David, including his priceless collection of rare scientific papers, books, and clothes, and drove directly home. Everything was placed in boxes. After renting a storage container and dropping off his items, I sent him the address and code to get entry. I then blocked all of his social media accounts, his email, and his phone number. My relatives began sending me messages right away, including guilt trips about how this would ruin Lisa's marriage, pleas to stay quiet about what had happened, and cautions about family loyalty. I also blocked their numbers. I came to a realization that evening while I was sitting by myself in my partially vacant flat. This was more than merely David's treachery. This was the result of my family always picking Lisa over me. I had finally had enough of them choosing her happiness above mine. I inhaled deeply, made a glass of wine for myself, and started methodically clearing out their contact details from my phone. Every time I deleted something, I felt lighter. I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. I put myself into my work after that night. My haven was the university. I worked in the lab for several hours as my research team worked on a molecular biology breakthrough project. Despite noticing my alteration, my co-workers were gracious enough to keep their distance. Richard, the husband of Lisa, arrived at my workplace 3 weeks following the engagement celebration. His normally spotless suit was a little rumpled, and he appeared exhausted. "Simply put, I need to know everything," he said. I was honest with him. He grabbed the armrest of his chair and listened in quiet, his knuckles white. After I was done, he got up, fixed his tie and remarked, "I appreciate your candor. You have at least one family member who respects the truth." Then he went away. My parents' efforts to get in touch with me grew more urgent. Voicemails about mending the family were left by Mom. Dad emailed about forgiving others and moving on. It was surprised that Lisa remained completely silent on the radio. My grandma later told me that Richard was divorcing them and had left their home. My pillar of support throughout this period was my grandmother Martha. She would sit with me, share stories about her personal challenges, and bring home-cooked meals. It was her opinion that the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. I was resolved to turn my suffering into something useful. So I concentrated on drafting my next research article. One of the best journals in my profession approved the work. A professor at another university sent me a congrats email the day it was published. Michael, 45M, was his name, and he was an expert in research facility architecture. Michael's email was kind but professional. He remarked that he had read my earlier work and that our departments might work together. I was drawn to his writing style because it demonstrated more than simply professional etiquette. There was a sincere interest in the science. We started a communication regarding the relationship between research efficiency and laboratory design once I replied. Over time, our emails grew longer and more intimate. He talked about how his own family had helped him pursue his unusual career path of integrating scientific study with building. I really ran into him one day when I was buying coffee at the school cafe. I spilt my coffee all over his white shirt while he was at our university for a conference. As I assisted him in cleaning up, Michael grinned and commented, "Well, this is quite different from our email conversations," rather than being upset. He asked if he could get me a coffee substitute. I paused. I had vowed to never date again after David, especially in academic settings. However, Michael was different in some way. Perhaps it was the way his eyelids wrinkled when he grinned or the fact that he made no effort to impress me with his academic background. Observing my hesitancy, he laughed, "I promise I'm not a serial killer. Just a clumsy architect who'd like to replace your coffee and maybe hear more about your latest research in person." "Just coffee," I firmly stated. For the first time in months, I felt at ease as we sat and chatted. David was not like Michael at all. When I told him about my work, he listened. Really listened. With refreshing candor, he told tales of his own endeavors, triumphs and setbacks. He asked if he might see me again before heading out to his next conference session. To my astonishment, I said yes. I sat in my office that night and gazed out over the campus. I felt hope, something I hadn't felt in a long time, when the quad was covered in long shadows from the sinking sun. Not only for a possible romance, but also for the chance to create a life that was really mine, free from Lisa's persistent influence and my family's expectations. My mother texted me, "Lisa is having a hard time." And my phone chimed. "Richard is acting irrationally. She requires her sister." I took a good look at the mail before deleting it without replying. After being torched, certain bridges ought to remain burned. Rather, I opened my email and started composing a letter to Michael regarding a joint study project I was considering. I grinned as I typed, recalling how his eyes had brightened when we talked about the possibilities of multidisciplinary study. Perhaps, just possibly, this was the start of something genuine. Something that was exclusively mine, unaffected by the poisonous relationships of my past. Update 1. 6 months have passed since my previous post. Regarding Michael, the architect I actually ran into at the campus cafe, many of you requested an update. That coffee date ended up into something I never would have imagined. Following our first meeting, we began discussing our joint study project over video calls. Over time, these business-related conversations turned into lengthy discussions on anything from childhood dreams to beloved books. Michael found my passion for academics fascinating. In contrast to my family, who always considered it as a weakness. There was no plan for our first actual date. We met to go over the specifics of the project while he was in town for another conference. We both were aware that we were hungry as the meeting was running late. We eventually found ourselves in a small Italian eatery close to campus, where we chatted and shared a plate of pasta until the waiters began stacking seats. I was particularly struck by how different he seemed from David. Michael did more than just skim my most recent research publication when I mentioned it. He read it carefully and returned with insightful questions. With refreshing candor, he discussed his own professional struggles, such as a recent project that had over its budget. When he inquired about my family, it was the true test. His genuine desire prompted me to open up, despite my initial reluctance. I filled him in on everything, including Lisa, my parents' partiality, and yes, the disastrous engagement party. He just listened, without the customary uncomfortable answers or attempts to protect familial relationships. He then showed me that he really understood by sharing his own experience with a competitive brother. Although our joint endeavor is progressing nicely, we have taken care to keep our personal and professional relationships apart. We mostly see each other on the weekends because his department is in a different state. In fact, the distance has been beneficial since it has allowed us to naturally build trust. He asked me to meet his family last weekend. Considering my past, I was afraid, but it was not what I had anticipated. I was welcomed right once by his mother, Linda, who shared stories about Michael's early architectural efforts and showed me his awkward childhood photos. It seems that he once attempted to use his father's power tools to rebuild their garage. "We've heard about your research work," Linda said, pulling me aside, Which was the most bizarre moment? Michael is constantly praising your brilliance. It was expressed with sincere pride and interest rather than comparison or jealously. I neglected to add that I recently received an offer at work that would allow me to work closer to Michael's university. It's a prominent position that would greatly boost my career. His initial reaction when I informed him about it was, "That's incredible. Describe the research opportunities in detail." I was ecstatic with my accomplishment and said nothing about what it meant for us. I still haven't agreed to the job. I'm hesitant to make significant life adjustments for a romance after everything that happened with my family and David. However, knowing that Michael would be there for me no matter what, I feel for the first time that I can base this choice on what's best for my career. Last week, my grandmother Martha met him and approved of him. Simply, "He sees you," she said. "Not who he wants you to be, but who you are." It has been quiet, to be honest, and I haven't heard from Lisa or my parents in months. Healing sometimes entails letting go of those who don't value you, even if they are family. Update 2. My last update regarding Michael was 3 months ago. I want to share this with the group who helped me get through my worst moments since a lot has transpired. I agreed to work at the university close to Michael's. The change was welcomed by my research team, and we have established a method for remote communication. The main reason the transfer has gone smoothly is that I took my time and properly planned everything. Last weekend, the most significant change occurred. I was in Michael's kitchen preparing dinner with him. Instead of the butter I expected, he was holding a little box when he turned back to retrieve something from the refrigerator. He didn't get down on one knee or give a long speech. "You know how we've been talking about combining lab design with research efficiency," he added instead. "Well, I've also been considering merging our lives. What are your thoughts?" The ring was very different from the gaudy one David had given me. It was exquisite and simple. Michael's following statement, "I know your work is important to you," truly touched me. A matching desk lamp is included with the ring for use during late-night research sessions. "Yes," I said, simultaneously crying and laughing. We are invited to an engagement celebration by Michael's parents. Regarding it, Linda has been really kind, often asking if I'm okay with the plans. Michael immediately offered that we forgo the party entirely when I hesitated. However, we're having a small gathering. Just close friends and family, because I don't want my past to control my future. Richard, the ex-husband of my former sister, sent me an unexpected email. He said he's doing well with his new companion and praised me. He appears content now that the divorce is official. Hearing from him was strangely therapeutic. Martha, my grandmother, is overjoyed. She gave me a hug and muttered, "This one's a keeper," after I showed her the ring. She is correct. The small things, like how he turned one of his spare rooms into a makeshift home office for me with a whiteboard for research notes, are what show how much Michael cares. Somehow, most likely through extended family, my parents learned about the engagement. Mom left a voicemail stating that they would like to participate in the celebration and make amends. I have not answered. It's preferable to keep some doors closed. Update 3. My engagement update was 2 months ago, and I wish I could report that everything has gone well since then. I must convey the unexpected turn the wedding preparations have taken. At the lakefront home of Michael's family, we were organizing a small ceremony. Linda has been fantastic. She has always respected our wishes while assisting with arrangements. Only family members, close friends and coworkers who truly support us were on the carefully picked guest list. Then I got an email yesterday that really chilled me. According to what my mother wrote, she and Dad decided to invite Lisa to the wedding. Their logic? She's your only sister, and family should be together on special days. I called Michael right away. "Whatever you want to do, I'm with you," he answered before I could even articulate my panic. "We have the day, not them." I was able to think clearly thanks to his cool backing. When I told my grandmother Martha, she became enraged. "After everything they've done," she said, "they have no right." I knew I had to deal with this on my own, but she offered to run interference. Before sending it, I wrote and revised my response multiple times. "Mom and Dad, I made it very plain that I didn't want Lisa to attend my wedding. This cannot be discussed. You won't be accepted either if you're unable to respect this barrier. Elena." Their reaction was expected. About family togetherness, Mom called in tears. Dad wrote a long email about forgiving others and letting go. They even had some family members contact them on their behalf. Michael has had tremendous support from his parents during this time. Linda called to reassure me that only those invited would be allowed entry to the location due to security measures. Michael's brother James volunteered to deal with any unwelcome visitors directly. My research team's support was the most unexpected. They offered to surround me with a protective circle during the wedding after I brought up the matter in a lab meeting, looking agitated. My department director, Dr. Anderson, even offered to accompany me on my wedding. Last night, Michael and I went over our wedding arrangements. If it made me feel safer, he proposed that we alter the location, the date, or even go on an elopement. However, I no longer wish to allow my family's behavior to dictate my decisions. Therefore, we're sticking to our original intentions while taking extra safety measures. Individual QR codes will be included in the invitations, security will be in place at the location, and most importantly, our chosen family and real friends will be present to support us. Last weekend, my grandmother assisted me in choosing my wedding gown. She said something that made me cry as I stood in front of the mirror. "Dear, you're gleaming. Because you're at last free to be who you are, not because of the outfit." Though I'm more resilient than I was previously, I'm still anxious about what Lisa might try. There is more to our wedding than just Michael and I becoming husband and wife. It's about choosing genuine love over poisonous familial relationships, happiness over drama, and tranquility over upheaval. Update 4. It took place. Lisa appeared to my wedding wearing an outfit that looked to be meant to attract attention and was obviously pregnant, despite all of our safety procedures and security measures. She had somehow entered through a service entrance thanks to our parents. Linda hurried in with a pale face when I was in the wedding room. "I'm very sorry, Elena," she was brought by them. "Your mother made a fuss about not excluding an expectant woman when we attempted to stop them." She didn't have to complete. My parents had already put Lisa in the front row, but Michael sent his brother James to deal with the problem right away. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the same smug expression on her face that I had witnessed at my engagement party with David. I inhaled deeply and turned to face the mirror. My wrist was adorned with a handcrafted bracelet fashioned by my research team, the exquisite clothing grandmother Martha had assisted me in selecting, and Michael's first present to me, a lovely necklace including a little microscope pendant. "What do you want to do?" When I called Michael, he inquired. "They can still be taken out, or we can put it off. I support you no matter what you decide." I realized then that I had allowed them to dictate my happiness all my life. "Not today. We're getting married," I stated confidently. "They can stay, but I'm done letting them write my story." The ceremony got underway. Dr. Anderson, the director of my department, escorted me down the aisle with pride. Everything else vanished when I saw Michael waiting for me with love and compassion in his eyes. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Everyone laughed when Michael pledged to constantly support my scientific endeavors, adding, "even if it means converting more rooms into lab space." From peer reviews to late-night science talks, I vowed to be his partner in everything. The reception followed. I believed I was ready for anything, but I was surprised by what transpired next. Lisa pretended to be the maid of honor and got to her feet, holding a glass of champagne. She began by describing how she had saved me from making terrible mistakes, and how she was always looking out for her big sister. Beneath the table, I felt Michael's fingers clasp mine. I noticed my research team stiffening up, poised to step in. Linda was getting up from her chair a little. However, for the first time in my life, I was able to fight my own fights without assistance. Calmly and professionally, as I would have addressed a lecture hall, I stood up, holding my own glass. "I think it's time for the bride to make a toast of her own," I replied. What came next? Well, that merits an update of its own. Let's simply say that speaking your truth with dignity might sometimes be the best form of retaliation rather than being silent. Update 5. Here is what transpired when I made my toast after my previous update regarding Lisa attending my wedding. As I stood there, staring at my sister's arrogant face, I experienced an odd feeling of peace. I'd been lecturing academically for years, so I knew how to control a room. I started by saying, "For those who don't know me well, I'm a scientist. We work with truth and facts. So allow me to share some family-related truths." There was a silence in the room. My sister, who was married at the time, was in bed with my then-fiancé 3 years ago. My parents were more concerned with preserving Lisa's reputation than with my wounded heart when I found them. At last, Lisa's smile wavered. Tom, her husband, whom she had brought as a sign of family unity, suddenly got to his feet. His voice was tight as he asked, "The baby, Tom? Is that why you've been avoiding the paternity test?" There was an overwhelming quiet in the room. Lisa placed a protective hand over her growing tummy. I went on, speaking steadily. "There has always been a trend in my family. Lisa's happiness comes first. They pleaded with me to remain silent after she ruined my first engagement. They helped her get in when she arrived here without permission. But today, I said, is about true family, the type that makes you stronger rather than weaker. My research group, who take pride in my accomplishments. Michael's family, who embraced me with unmatched warmth. My grandmother, who never failed to recognize me for who I am. Tom was the first to go. Lisa called his name and ran after him. My mother was crying as my parents followed. The room's atmosphere abruptly lightened when the door closed behind them. Then my grandmother got up and held up her glass. In her own words, to Elena and Michael. To truth, to real love, and to the family we choose. The remainder of the reception was excellent. Everyone relaxed without the burden of pretense. My study team secretly practiced a surprise dance, which they performed. I found out the following morning that Tom had requested a paternity test and filed for divorce. For once, I didn't feel obligated to assist in picking up the pieces when Lisa's meticulously constructed world fell apart. Update 6. A year has passed since my wedding and the amazing things that happened there. I wanted to give the community that helped me through everything one last update because so much has changed. Michael and I are expecting our first child, which is the major news initially. My first emotion upon seeing the positive test result was one of terror. It brought back memories of my own familial relationships. However, Michael's answer was ideal. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "This kid's going to have the best mom, a brilliant scientist who knows how to love unconditionally." The family of Michael and Linda has been amazing. Linda was thrilled about my latest research article as well as the baby when we told them. "This child is going to have such an amazing role model," she remarked, describing my work in the journal. I've heard tidbits of information regarding Lisa's situation from my grandmother Martha. Tom's suspicion that the baby wasn't his was validated by the paternity test. She is currently trying to start again while living with our parents. The reality of being a single mother has replaced the opulent lifestyle and fancy clothing. I occasionally have a slight sense of sadness, not precisely guilt, for the way things turned out. Michael's statement, "Consequences aren't cruel, they're just truth in action," comes to mind next. I'm doing well with my research. Michael and I worked together to build a new laboratory, and the university recently granted money for it. His inventive architecture and my research needs make for the ideal combination of our skills. Our work collaboration has only improved our friendship on a personal level. In my new lab, our baby will have a dedicated space, a secure enclosed play area, where they may be close to me as I work. Michael created it himself, adding all the safety features he could think of while still making it engaging for a child's growth. My circumstances haven't changed much, but I have. I no longer feel the need to compete for attention or prove myself. In our household, there is no hierarchy of love or success, only mutual understanding, support, and sincere joy in one another's accomplishments. Grandmother Martha, who is thrilled to be a great-grandmother, comes to visit frequently. She's already crocheting the baby little lab jackets while entertaining us with tales of my own early science projects. Even now, my parents still make an effort to connect, generally through family. I'm not ready, but they want to be involved in their grandchild's life. Some wounds require real change rather than just time to heal. As I reflect on my path, I see that responsibility or blood relationships aren't the key to creating a meaningful family. It's about finding people that love you for who you are, celebrate your happiness, and encourage your aspirations. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. Although life isn't flawless, it is genuinely and delightfully mine. I child-proofed for my in-laws visit, but my husband thought I was overreacting. Now he's gone further after day one with our nephew. Original post, I am at 26F, and my husband is 29M. We have been married for 5 years and we went to Berlin right after marriage since we both found really well-paying jobs. Meanwhile, both of our families, parents, siblings, etc., still live back in Greece and we usually visit back occasionally. Now me and my husband don't have any children and we don't plan to have any. We enjoy buying expensive things and experiencing things we never got to as children, such as nice furniture in our home, going to exotic restaurants with friends, travel, hobbies, and generally just our lives with each other exactly the way it is. But that's just how my husband thinks. His family is very traditional and every married couple has at least one kid. This time my husband invited my Bill and CL to visit us with their 3-year-old son for 2 weeks. This would be the first time they've traveled with their son and the first time we would be hosting our nephew at our home. Now our nephew is known to be going through the terrible twos and has been throwing tantrums and breaking things lately, so I did some child-proofing in our home a day before my in-laws were due to arrive. I removed all the glass and ceramic decor. I swapped out our linen tablecloth for a plastic one. I locked up our intoxication devices. I also covered our sofas with a plushy fabric cover. Our sofa's fabric is white cashmere, because my nephew likes to snack while watching TV and we can always take it outside and dust off food crumbs. I also changed my maid's schedule to come in 5 days a week instead of 3 so she can help prepare breakfast and make sure the house is tidy. However, when my husband saw all of my changes, he kind of got upset. He told me he felt that I was preparing our house as if we were hosting messy and uncivilized people. And asked me why I don't make these changes when our friends in Berlin who have kids come over for dinner. He also said that he's never seen our friends make these sorts of changes in their own home for their kids. I don't understand this comparison at all. Coming over for dinner for 3 hours and staying at a place for a couple of weeks is very different. And we've visited our in-laws enough to see how chaotic their home can get to the point where my Bill and SIL keep mostly plastic items in their homes for convenience. AITA. Top comments. Tulip afternoon, NTA. Instead of worrying the entire visit that their kid could ruin something expensive, the visiting parents can rest assured that the space has been child-proofed. As long as all the changes don't make the space uncomfortable, for example squeaky plastic couch covers or all decor being hidden so the place is bare, I think it makes a lot of sense. You are making the visit less stressful for everyone. Horror reveal 7618. He told me he felt that I was preparing our house as if we were hosting messy and uncivilized people. He's quoting the definition of a toddler here. OOP is voted NTA Update 1. Same post. Edit. We hadn't spoken since we had our fight last night and my in-laws are supposed to be landing in the morning. My husband brought food from a restaurant I liked and told me he wanted to apologize. He told me he overreacted because he wasn't admitting to himself how different his brother is as a person ever since he became a dad and that his life is going in a very different direction with more financial hardships too, and that makes him angry and helpless. He told me he misdirected his frustration at me and thought what I did was really nice, especially since he is more finicky than I am. I tried my best to make him feel not guilty and responsible for the lives and decisions of other grown-ups. But I'm so relieved he came around on his own. Update 2. Same post. Edit 2. So guys, it's officially day 1 of the in-laws visit and my husband has now gone an extra step and put away most of the lamps in our house because they are glass and super dangerous for a toddler to be around. We have about 35 'cause we hate ceiling lights. When we picked up our in-laws from the airport and were driving them back, my nephew accidentally poured a bag of chips all over the back seat and floor mats. Everyone just laughed, but I know my husband was horrified inside and now he's been vacuuming the backseat area for 2 hours now, lol. Oh, and in-laws super appreciated our baby proofing. Parents demand I cancel my wedding for sister's engagement, but the truth about her cheating changed everything. Engaged to my fiancé Jake, 30 million. I, a 28-year-old lady, have been for roughly 8 months. Up until last week, when my parents shocked us, our October wedding was scheduled and all was going according to plan. For background, Mia, 25F, our younger sister has always been the golden child in our family. She has been seeing Tom, 26 million, her lover for around 2 years. In practically every sphere of our existence, my parents have always showered Mia with royal care. Though I hate to sound negative, I have always felt as though hers dominates my successes. Mia was a cheerleader while I was a straight-A student playing on the volleyball team back in high school. Her achievements always seemed to eclipse all mine. Not to get me wrong, cheerleading merits just as much respect as any other sport, but would it have killed my parents to exhibit the same fervor for my events? I grew used to my absent parents and learned to expect almost little from them. I thus cut myself off from Mia, though deep down I knew it wasn't her responsibility. My immature self blamed mom for everything. My viewpoint altered only in college, when I met Jake, the love of my life. He let me see that I deserved just as much attention as everyone else and was deserving of affection. Jake showed me that every one of us is unique in our own right and that, should someone not value my accomplishments, well, that is their loss. I also realized that it was unfair to hold Mia totally responsible when our parents were clearly in charge. I thus resolved to try to rebuild whatever sisterly relationship we still had. I started letting her know she could talk to me about anything and checking up on her more often. She first hesitated naturally, but she soon grew more at ease sharing with me. We discussed practically anything, regardless of its silliness or gravity. Though our tastes and paths of life were different, I was glad our connection was getting better gradually. We seemed to be at last the sisters we ought to have been all along. Mia knew first when Jake proposed to her. Telling me she couldn't wait to help arrange my wedding, she was as eager as I was. Everything seemed ideal at that point. I was therefore really taken aback when my mother called last Wednesday. The call began innocuously enough. Mom inquired about wedding preparations, which was odd given her previous lack of enthusiasm. I ought to have seen something was wrong. She finally got right to the point after a few minutes of small talk. Mia and Tom were getting engaged. I started to be delighted for my sister as soon as those words emerged from her mouth. Better than this, what could be? Then I noticed Mom had stated, "Planning to get engaged?" which threw me off. Mom said Mia had told her Tom had been hinting at proposing when I asked her what she meant by that. He had done all the other usual things, asked about her ring size, advised her to get a new outfit, and told her. Although these were rather clear indicators, Mia always had a tendency of romanticizing everything and exaggerating events to make them appear more than they really were. I wanted Mia not to have her expectations skyrocketing only to be let down. When I asked Mom whether she was absolutely convinced Tom was proposing, she answered boldly. That would have marked the end of the call, but another surprise was approaching, one I would not be pleased about. My mother asked me to call off our wedding since Tom and Mia were apparently engaged. I let out a gasp. Though I must have misinterpreted, I asked her to clarify. No, she was dead serious. For 10 months I had been planning. She wanted me to call off the wedding Jake had proposed. We had waited this long since we wanted the wedding of our dreams and refused to compromise on anything. Deposits for the caterers and other suppliers had already been laid down. Not to mention the inconvenience of rearranging things, moving everything back a year would entail losing a large sum of money. What had descended upon Mom and Dad was unknown to me. When we were short on money, they had volunteered to cover the venue. I assumed this was because they were at last interested in my life. Looking back, it seemed like they did it to challenge Jake's parents. But I was too delighted at the time to pay attention to their hidden agendas. Wait, though, this was not even the worst of things. You haven't heard the rationale behind my planned delay of my wedding for Mia's expected engagement. Mom clarified that Mia wanted to be the center of attention for a full year, complete with announcements on social media and engagement pictures. I could not understand at all. Who loses money over something as flimsy as social media and calls their sister off from her wedding? Promising not to post anything about my wedding online, I tried to argue with Mom, but she claimed they would withdraw all the money they had promised for the wedding should I refuse to postpone it. Their lovely daughter was an attention seeker, hence at this time they were virtually blackmailing me. This was ludicrous and unfair, I told my mother. We debated for some time, her arguing that I was being thoughtless of Mia's sentiments and selfish. What about my feelings? I asked repeatedly. Still, I received no meaningful response. She responded simply that they wouldn't pay for the venue should I proceed with the wedding. I got furious. All my life, I gave things up for Mia's sake. Now, when I was at last ready to experience the day of my dreams, that too was being robbed from me. Out of pure annoyance and rage, I did something I never would have done. I contacted Mia's fiancé, Tom, to let him know something about Mia he didn't know. The four of us, Jake and I, Mia and Tom, went on a double date some years ago when everything was good. One of those few times when we all had time to hang around together. I recall being quite content. We laughed, told stories, and for once everything seemed ideal. Mia and I excused ourselves to the bathroom to freshen at one point throughout the evening. Mia handed me her phone to hold as we corrected our makeup so she could wash her hands. A text message suddenly sprang up on the screen. It came from someone called Mike wondering whether they might get back together. My heart still missed a beat. Though I heard Mia had dated someone some years ago, I felt he was no more relevant. Not sure I could resist asking, "Who's Mike, and why is he asking to meet again?" Mia started to spin right away. She dismissed it, believing it was nothing, just some old acquaintance extending outreach. Still, I could see her eyes ablaze with dread. I questioned once more whether something was developing between her and Mike. She said she had some texting back and forth, but she insisted it was not major. She shrugged her eyes and replied lightly, "Tom didn't need to know, it's nothing," when I inquired whether Tom knew about this. Tom seemed to be a nice man totally loving Mia. Though I couldn't get rid of the uncomfortable sensation, I let it pass since Mia later on told me she was no longer corresponding with her ex. Right then, as Mia was trying to rob me of my bliss, my thoughts went crazy. I lay it all out when I phoned Tom, roughly following the text I had seen that day. And should that not be sufficient, I advised him to monitor his girlfriend. Looking back, I realized this was sort of improper, not the sort of truth I should have been imparting to Tom, of course, but the way I did it. But already it was too late. I spoke with Tom 2 days ago, and then Mom called. Just say I was glad I wasn't in front of her. She was yelling like a crazed person, as though a tragedy had hit. Her comments really impacted me as I had made a major error. Tom apparently told Mia they needed to talk when phoning her. Mia got all ready even though she was about to be engaged, but when she at last arrived at the location, Tom was quite irate. He inquired whether that was accurate and reiterated what I had said. Mia first denied it, but she grew angry when Tom wanted to see her phone, telling him he should believe her. Tom split from Mia at last. Mom and Dad never seemed likely to pardon me for this. Mom yelled at me, And I could hear Mia berating me in the backdrop. I kept apologizing, saying I only did this because they insisted I call off my wedding. I told them I had worked very hard on it. Dad's ruling then was that he was taking back the money they had set aside for the venue. I felt as like I had lost everything, my parents, Mia, and any chance for a marriage at that same instant. Given what had happened, I knew Jake would not be pleased with me either. When I attempted phoning Mia to have a conversation, she didn't respond to my calls or texts. At the time, Jake was on a business trip, hence he was not aware that our wedding was under risk, partially because to me. Though it wasn't entirely my fault, the stress was intolerable and I felt bad for damaging Mia's relationship. I at last told Jake everything when he returned from his trip. He was quite helpful and encouraged me that we would work things out together. It relieves me. He helped me see that I ought to have done it even earlier, as being honest was the correct thing to do. Regarding the wedding, Jake and I decided to proceed even if it meant lowering expenses. We began generating ideas for financial savings. We contacted relatives and friends, outlining the circumstances and requesting assistance. Unbelievably, one of Jake's pals came to save us. He came upon us at a classy but reasonably priced location via one of his contacts. Given the current situation, we simply have to delay the wedding somewhat more, which is quite okay with me. I was attempting to stay in touch with my parents throughout this. Looking back, I'm not sure why I did this. At the time, I was afraid of being let down. I was living with guilt. Still, they were obstinate, refusing to show up for my wedding if it proceeded as scheduled. The wedding was still under preparation, and despite all the challenges, everything began to fall together. Sadly, many of my family RSVP'd that they would not be going or responded little at all. I could guess the news had gone without having to be Sherlock. One of my aunts told me Mom and Mia had depicted me as a soap opera villain who lied to undermine her sister's happiness and could not accept it. They even changed the story, saying Mia was already engaged and preparing to wed, but I later got engaged to take the front stage. Ignoring me was one thing, lying about my character took effort. By now I was exhausted. After all that had happened, I couldn't look and feel my best for a wedding. Simultaneously, I struggled to let my parents define me as they had throughout their lifetime. They accused me of being envious and cruel, attributing Mia's life destruction to me. Mia, on the other hand, was in ruins. She hadn't spoken to me since the incident, hence even though I knew what I did was appropriate, I felt awful. So, I'm asking you. Am I the a-hole for not postponing my wedding and informing Mia's fiancé of her cheating? Update: I published a few days ago, and the reaction has been really strong. Unbelievably, my parents began talking to me, but not for the reasons you might guess. They insisted that I apologize to Mia and somehow sort things out with Tom. Should I fail, they even threatened to have me disowned. Through all of this, Jake has been rather encouraging, telling me we did the right thing and we should concentrate on our forthcoming wedding. But at last Mia got back to me. Furious and devastated, she accused me of destroying her life and undermining her happiness out of spite. The talk was challenging. She wasn't open to hearing me try to explain my perspective. She persisted in arguing, regardless of what she had done, I had no right to meddle in her relationship. I lost my cool and asked her who gave her the right to believe she could influence my wedding plans that had been in place long before she was almost engaged. She hung up before I could even bring up the lies Mom and she had been telling about me. Meg, a childhood acquaintance I hadn't heard from in years, called me out of the blue when word of the family strife spread like wildfire. After moving out for college, I had disconnected from Meg, and our only means of contact was social media. But Mia had kept in touch with her for a bit longer. Their friendship reached into their early 20s. Meg also disclosed another startling story concerning Mia's adultery, one that happened around a year ago. Meg's 25th birthday celebration was attended by Mia without her then boyfriend Tom, who presumably was on a trip. Meg saw Mia growing more flirty with various male visitors, including her boyfriend, as the evening progressed and practically everyone was intoxicated. Meg first dismissed it as Mia's usual manner. She had always been a natural flirt. Meg knew, though, she hadn't seen Mia or her partner for some time as the celebration drew to an end and guests started to leave. Red-handed together in another room, they were caught. Given Mia and Tom had been dating 2 to 3 years at the time, this was very embarrassing. The episode split Meg and Mia and destroyed their friendship. When Meg learned about everything, she assumed I should know that Mia did nothing by mistake. She had become accustomed to this conduct and had somehow always gotten away with it. This fresh material really surprised me. Mia's dishonesty, I came to see, was not a one-time error but rather a habit. I asked Meg only one favor. Could she kindly forward this news to Tom herself? I was acting for a cause. When my fiancé Jake visited Tom, He was not doing well. Though he didn't say it, I'm sure he was also blaming me for what I had told him. He was second-guessing everything. Better still if someone else than me delivered this terrible news. I also wanted to avoid feeding the story that I was jealous of Mia, hence I didn't want to do this myself. Tom wanted to meet personally to go over things as soon as he received word from Meg. I accepted, expecting for some sort of conclusion or at least clear the air. Tom clearly was in shock from all that had transpired when we met at a neighborhood coffee shop. Meg's disclosure came to him like yet another wave, yet it was welcome to at last know the truth. Tom related how his split from Mia turned out. Mia was right to believe Tom intended to pop the question to her. Following our talk, he challenged Mia about the cheating, and she finally came clean. Though crushed, he valued my candor. He claimed it was preferable to know the truth now than to learn later, maybe following marriage. Tom said he had thought something was awry in their relationship for some time but couldn't pin it down until I phoned. We spoke for a lengthy period during which Tom revealed he intended to set aside time for personal healing and life review. Though it hurt, he appreciated me for having the guts to tell him the truth. Knowing I had done the right thing by being truthful with Tom, this chat brought me closure. Still, things with my family have not gotten better. My parents still support Mia. They think I was out of line and must make apologies. Focusing just on Mia's pain and neglecting the fact she cheated, they cannot seem to understand why I did what I did. Friends and relatives who learned about the circumstances have also been quite helpful. Many expressed shock at the way my parents behaved and praised me for defending what was right. Though I have a mixed bag of feelings, I am appreciative of the help from people who see my viewpoint. I'm trying to keep concentrated on the good and keep wedding planning underway. Despite the threats from his parents, Jake and I have decided to carry out our plans. We have changed the budget and are working to create the wedding unique without their financial support. Though I know the drama is not over, I am resolved to stick to my position. I refuse to allow Mia's behavior or the inclination of my parents define my existence anymore. I have to give my future with Jake top priority and my happiness. Hey, everyone. Every moment that passes makes my life seem to get more convoluted. About 4 days following my initial update, events changed dramatically and unexpectedly. Just as I felt the situation could not get worse, it did. Trying to concentrate, I was at work when Jake called urgently. Panicked, he told me to head straight home. Fuming something horrible, I rushed back. When I got here, Jake seemed obviously upset. He handed me a note that had dropped under our door. It came from a lawyer standing in for my parents. Over the consequences from Mia's failed engagement, they were threatening to sue me for emotional suffering and slanderous remarks. I was astounded. My own parents were suing me. The letter explained how my actions had destroyed Mia's reputation and brought her great emotional suffering. It called for a public apology, a retraction of my remarks on Mia's adultery, and a sizable payback in money. To be as nasty as possible, my parents had stretched every limit. My phone buzzed as I went over the letter. Mia was the one calling constantly. At last, looking for some answers, I took up Mia's voice carrying a mix of desperation and wrath. Saying I had destroyed her life and she had nothing left, she screamed at me. She said she had lost her work since Tom had informed colleagues and mutual acquaintances of hers about her adultery. The word had gone like wildfire, and she was today the target of rumors and criticism. She was deemed problematic, which resulted in her termination. Having my parents send me that legal fear, I felt Mia got what she deserved. She was inconsolable even though I tried to reason with her, stressing that she had to own her actions. Claiming that I had always wanted to see her fail, she charged me with being envious and bitter. The chat made me feel forlorn and exhausted. The rest of the evening, Jake and I went over our choices. Although we couldn't let my parents pressure us into compliance, we couldn't afford to get caught in a legal fight with them. This legal fight would simply mark the nail in the coffin, as I believe they knew we were already juggling our wedding budget. I contacted a lawyer for help the next day. The circumstances stunned him, but he reassured me our case was strong. He advised us to compile proof of Mia's adultery and how it affected her relationship to Tom. Should my parents carry out their threats, he also cautioned us to get ready for a counterclaim. All of this was going on when I got another unplanned call, this one from Tom's mother. Having heard about the circumstances, she wanted to thank me for guiding Tom toward the truth. Tom was devastated, she remarked, but he was glad to learn before committing himself for lifetime. She also said Tom intended to start again in another city. Her call provided a minor solace among all the turmoil. It let me realize that by being honest, I had done the right thing even with the instantaneous fallout. Though they may act as outrageously as they wanted, my parents and Mia would remain in the wrong. That weekend, things took yet another drastic turn. Unexpectedly showing up at our residence were my folks furious. They insisted on talking with me. Though Jake tried to calm them, it soon turned into a shouting contest. While my mother wailed and begged me to mend things with Mia, my father claimed I had destroyed the family. Should I fail to meet their expectations, they reiterated their threats to cut me off financially and go on with the lawsuit. I stayed put, not cowering into compliance. I told them I would not be sorry for speaking the truth. Mia's actions have consequences. My parents stormed out at the end of the confrontation, resolved to start the case. The next several days were a haze of emotional upheaval and legal discussions. Though Jake and I tried to concentrate on our wedding preparations, the tension was too great. Extended family members who had heard about the circumstances started messaging us. Some offered support while others attacked my behavior. Although Jake didn't deserve all this drama, I really detested dragging him through it, but I was also appreciative of his unflinching support. In among all this, Meg, the childhood friend who had informed me of Mia's past infidelity, sent me an unexpected note. Should my parents want to take legal action, her offer to submit a statement regarding what had happened at her party may be very important proof. Meg's encouragement and the data we were compiling helped me to begin to see hope. Although it was obvious that this struggle was far from finished, I resolved myself to stick to what was right. As I am working on it, I also want to thank you all for being my support network during this period. Though it hasn't been simple, you have clearly shown me direction. I will see you folks a little. Hello, everyone. After several more days, the issue has gotten quite hot. Mia and my dad insisted on getting together personally to go over everything. Jake and I consented, believing this encounter could at last provide some clarity and closure. We agreed to get together in our place so we might manage the surroundings and steer clear of a public display. There was clear tension in the air as my parents and Mia showed up. When they sat down, I could see the expectation in their eyes. Though I had no intention of backing down, they most likely assumed I would be apologizing and begging for forgiveness. I began with tackling the elephant in the room. My parents and Mia looked perplexedly, obviously not expecting this. I informed them, I understand why everyone is here today, but before we go any further, I want to make one thing clear. I'm here to lay out the facts. I inhaled deeply and started making my point. I began with the couple months ago. I questioned Mia if it wasn't true that she handed me her phone during our double-date dinner and that I found she was chatting to Mike, her ex-boyfriend, when she was in a very committed relationship with Tom. She said she made a one-time error, but we both knew it wasn't accurate. Mia moved uneasily in her seat, her face pallid. I carried on, opening a folder loaded with proof. She confirmed that Mia had been found cheating with her boyfriend when I told her I had talked with Meg, who threw the party a year ago. This was a behavior trend, not a one-time error. I turned over a written statement Meg sent. Mia's parents and I looked at it, their expressions changing from uncertainty to shock. Still, that was only one thing. I also brought out more proof. Text exchanges between Mia and Meg in which Mia admitted to cheating and pleaded with Meg not to tell Tom. These timestamped signals were unambiguous and devoid of uncertainty. On the table I arranged the printed messages. Though this time it appeared more toward Mia than it did me, my mother gasped and my father's face became red with rage. At last, I turned to Tom and said in a letter, he spoke about how he approached Mia following our talk and how she finally admitted. He also detailed the emotional toll her adultery took on him and how it affected his choice not to pop the question. My parents found no words. Unable to dispute the overwhelming proof, they fixated on the paperwork before them. Tears welled in Mia's eyes, but she said nothing, clearly understanding the seriousness of the matter. I then addressed the lawsuit. Although my parents had threatened to sue me for emotional suffering and slander, based on the facts it was abundantly evident that what I had said was accurate. They lacked legal justification for their posture. Actually, if they went after this, I had a strong case for a counterclaim. The space was quiet. Clearly surprised and adjusting to the reality of the circumstances were my parents and Mia. Knowing that I had at last advocated for myself, I felt relief. For the last time, I told Mia I did this because it was the proper thing to do, not out of spite or jealousy. Mia had consequences for her actions. It was time for her to own them. Regarding my wedding, my message was straightforward. Either with or without their approval, everything was going forward as scheduled. We wouldn't allow someone to destroy our happiness. Jake and I would be getting married. Rising to indicate that the session was over, I hoped this would be a turning point for all of us. That brought me closure and I left the room. Though I am aware that difficulties lie ahead, I feel for the first time in a long time under charge of my own life. Although my parents and Mia can proceed with their case, now they know I will be squarely facing them and there is no good outcome for either of us. The encouragement of our friends and relatives keeps Jake and I forging ahead with our new life. Though the road to recovery with my sister and family will be long and challenging, we are ready to travel it together. Eventually, defending myself and acting morally offered a sense of tranquility I had been lacking for so long. Looking ahead, Jake and I know we are stronger since we confronted these obstacles squarely. Without the recommendations and encouragement in the comments, this would not have been feasible. All of you and your tales have taught me so much. Thank you, then farewell. My husband has informed me that he intends to go on a gaycation with his Bill in Ibiza. How should I handle this? Original post. Hi there, I really wish I didn't have to make this post, but here goes. So me and my husband have been happily married for about 16 years, give or take. We both have stable careers, good family life, and are fairly fortunate despite the cost of living racking the UK right now. We have 2 boys, 15 and 10, and up until this Sunday, thought we had it pretty good. We argue sometimes of course, but never get too bad, and we have a pretty decent sex life with some exploration, but I won't get into that. Long and short is, on Sunday, just after I dropped our boys off at their friends, my husband asked me if we had the house alone and, more importantly, do I have a minute? I said yes, and he sat me down, then got out this printed poster for some sort of orgy, and started explaining to me the concept of a gaycation. How it's where straight men go to somewhere with sun, sand and booze, and become gay, for the duration of the trip, but that's fine because it doesn't actually count, because what happens on the gaycation, stays on the gaycation. I was just completely silent and mortified, even more so when he said he was looking into booking a trip to Ibiza next year with his BIL, his sister's husband, to experience it for himself. When he finally let me speak, I just said, I need him to be clear with me, is he gay? Because if yes, that's okay, but we need to figure out what happens going forward. I didn't let myself get angry or upset, I was just stunned. He swore up and down how he's not gay and he's 100% attracted to women and of course still loves me and our boys. So I said, well, do you think you're bi maybe? And he got very defensive, saying how I need to drop the accusations and that this is the beauty of the gaycation. It allows straight men to experience gayness without actually being gay, and how it's like going to an aquarium. And again, he was adamant he doesn't find men's bodies or genitalia exciting at all, but he needs to experience this apparently. I said, well, I'm really not comfortable because even if he was bi, this would be explicitly cheating on me, and he got angry and reiterated he's not, because that's the beauty of the gaycation, etc. I just had enough and left the room. I ignored him for the rest of the day, but we spoke at tea where I again asked him, why does he want to do this so badly if he's not gay? He said how he's interested in how gay men's lives differ to straight men's, and that unfortunately, once the gaycation begins, it's simply impossible for a man to resist and he must surrender himself mind, body and soul, to the gaycation or be destroyed. I really can't put into words how surreal it was, because he was speaking so matter-of-factly, and he again insists this is a thing that straight men do all the time and how he's actually doing it a bit late. I just said to him if he has any love for me then he can't go ahead with this, and if he does, the marriage will be dead. We didn't speak anymore after that. Since then he's mentioned no more of it, but somehow, and this is what scares me a lot too, that decision genuinely seems to be tearing him up. He didn't go into work on Monday, and only went in half a day yesterday, because he told them he just felt too ill and he just looks distraught every time I see him. I really don't think he's wholly gay though. I can absolutely believe he's bi, but I'd rather we talked about that in a healthy way rather than this incredibly weird denialism around going on a sex holiday to Ibiza. Has anyone known straight guys to do this and come back and just go back to being straight? Like, surely that can't be a thing that happens. I'm so out of my depth here and I just don't know how to even initiate the conversation. For the record, I also haven't mentioned it to his sister yet. I don't know how I'd even break it to her. Thanks for any help. I just don't even want to think so being able to get this out there has helped even just a little bit. Edit. Wow, this blew up. This has been incredibly sobering, and I think I've now confirmed what I already knew to be the case. The marriage is dead, one way or another. In a way I was in denial about that. I have contacted my SIL and she initially screamed at me, calling me a liar, and even insisted I was trying to steal her husband. She rang me back shortly after, apologized and admitted she was in deep, deep shock. I have asked my parents to look after the boys and we're going to meet tomorrow to discuss this deeper. I have also texted my husband and told him he will need to make alternative accommodation arrangements, but he will not be sleeping here tonight and a bag will be waiting for him. Not sure if the mods want to lock the post or not, but I think I've got my answers. Thank you for all the kind words, especially Champion Flight, who really gave me the good dose of reality I needed. P.S. I see a lot of people asking about the aquarium, and at risk of doxing myself. There is a pretty famous aquarium in the UK called the Deep. At the very end you walk through a tunnel that goes underneath the main fish tank, so it's quite immersive, I suppose. My husband explained the aquarium thing and that it's a bit like that. You go there and you observe the fishes, you even get a bit up close but you never actually enter the water, get emotionally invested, or become a fish wa gay, so it doesn't really count. It was a very bizarre analogy and I pointed out it still makes no sense and he just got more in a huff and how I just don't get it. And frankly I still don't. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Your husband isn't proposing a gaycation. He's proposing cheating on you with men while using magical thinking to pretend it doesn't count. The fact that he's planning this with his sister's husband makes it even more disturbing. His bizarre explanation about surrendering mind, body and soul isn't straight man curiosity, it's someone desperately trying to justify exploring his sexuality while keeping his heterosexual marriage. His depression about not being able to go isn't about missing a vacation. It's about being forced to confront his sexuality without his convenient, what happens in Ibiza stays in Ibiza, excuse. His meltdown over not going shows how desperately he wants to avoid facing this reality. I read over this multiple times and I guess the worst part is I know you're completely right. OOP should consider about the divorce. OOP. I wanted to avoid the divorce option but, I guess it's the only option isn't it? Commenter 2. So this is just a thought. But I'm wondering if he was really planning on doing the gaycation or if that was just a cover to try to get you to agree to it. What if the real plan was to get with women while he's down there? Oop. That. I hadn't really thought of that tbh. And now the thought terrifies me. From the way he was talking about men, the fact he had a poster for a gay orgy, I mean it's one hell of a bluff surely. Commenter 3. Tell him you are gonna have a straight action while he's gone and you are going to surrender mind, body and soul to other men. Honest to God, if my husband proposed this to me, I'd use his time away to pack up, move out and have divorce papers waiting for him. Update. November 28, 2024. So when I last posted, I'd contacted my husband to tell him he wouldn't be staying at home tonight and a bag would be waiting for him. As you can imagine, we argued. Quite badly. I won't go into the specific details but no, I'm 100% on board with the fact at a minimum he's bi, might even be gay altogether. We've had arguments in the past but I've genuinely never seen him have such a childish tantrum before, screaming about how I just don't understand the gaycation, absolutely despise that phrase now, and insinuating I'm actually homophobic because I refuse to allow him to participate in this cultural exchange with the gay community. A lot of you asked him if it'd be acceptable if the roles were reversed and I did say would it be acceptable if I went and slept with other guys during that week. Like fucking clockwork, he was very angry and offended, saying it's completely different because a gaycation means nothing and what happens on the gaycation, stays on the gaycation etc. So doesn't actually count. Whereas I'd just be, straight up cheating? Well, I turned it around on him. No, but you see what happens in Manchester stays in Manchester. It doesn't mean anything, it doesn't count. It's like birdwatching. And I think it got through to him. He went all quiet and then started crying, admitting the thought of me sleeping with another man is destroying his heart but relationships need sacrifices, so agreed, while in tears, that when he goes on the gaycation, I'll get 1 week in Manchester to do whatever I want. He doesn't want me to, but that's fair in a twisted way, he supposed. I told him to get out of my house. Thankfully he left without a fight. I know it's incredibly petty but I also drained the joint bank account, legal in the UK, so he couldn't try to use it against me. About an hour later, I got rang up by his mum, my MIL, who just screamed and screamed at me about being a cheating whore, how I was horrible, what about the kids, etc. When I finally got my composure back I just said ask your son about the gaycation. Obviously at first she got angry but I said no, just ask him about the gaycation, he'll explain, but she called me a fucking joke and hung up. Later on, getting into the evening, I got another phone call from her in floods of tears. She was very apologetic and I told her she doesn't need to be the one to apologize. She was so upset she put Phil on the phone and while he sounded calm, I could just sort of tell he was on the warpath. Again, very apologetic and said he overheard that phrase, asked my husband and husband initially said no it's nothing before explaining how it's a modern thing, men to do, etc., and gave them the same spiel about how what happens on the gaycation, men cannot resist the gaycation, how a man must surrender to the gaycation etc. FIL just said they told him to leave or they'd call the police, don't care where he goes but he wasn't staying there. Husband tried to call me while I was on the phone but I just ignored it and Phil just said he was so sorry for me and they have my corner in this so. That's one thing. Told them to be there for their daughter because it sounds like Bill is involved, husband didn't tell them that. And Phil just said he had to go because he was so angry. Got a text from my husband after the phone call which was all weirdly rambly, saying about how I'd abused the gaycation to destroy his marriage and destroy his life, and again insisted I, and his parents, were homophobic for doing such a thing. Told him we'll talk when he grows up and blocked his number. I took a day off work myself to have the locks changed this morning, so that's 500 pounds gone, but whatever, at least I know he won't be coming back. I'm going to look into how to proceed with a divorce and then we'll move from there. Oh, of course, there's also my brother-in-law. So I haven't yet met with Sil. She was in such a state and has taken this far worse than I have for reasons that'll be clear soon. We're going to maybe try tomorrow, but we did talk over the phone and I eavesdropped on the conversation with her husband where she put her phone on speaker and I went on mute. Her husband got home earlier, she made him come home, told him there was an emergency, and just said to him, "Can you please explain what a gaycation is?" She told me afterwards she was praying he'd look confused, or just be like, "What?" or anything like that. But instead he just sat her down and explained that a gaycation is a new thing where straight men go to gay hotspots and participate in gay sex acts, but it doesn't count because there's no investment and because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. He said it's like writing down angry thoughts and putting them in a drawer. You never have to see them again. Whole time, Sil is in tears as he just calmly bats off the same points my husband did about how it doesn't count, and he even did the whole thing. It's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed shit. I seriously think they must be speaking to a dominatrix or something. Are there even male doms? Because surely neither of them are that into this to actually make that up on their own. I really don't want to go into what was discussed, for her sake, but it did become very apparent to me that the Bill is into sissy hypno porn and at times conflated that with the concept of a gaycation. There was this utterly surreal moment where Sil is just trying to wrap her head around this while also in floods of tears, and he explains, so genuinely, so matter-of-factly, that for most men, the gaycation is either a one-time or annual thing, but some men go on the gaycation for years, and others simply never return, because they use hypnosis and mind control to be totally feminized, into a state of permanent pseudo-gayness. She said in disbelief, surely if you're taking it up the arse willingly because you want to, that makes you gay. And he said no, because that's the beauty of the gaycation. You can do all this gay stuff but you don't interact with the wider gay life experience. She asked him if the sissy stuff is what he wanted and he said, not on a long-term basis, and was adamant this is something all straight men do, but she wouldn't get it because she's a woman. Then there were more insinuations of homophobia. Well, that marriage is dead too, I suppose. The whole ordeal ended when she said to him he has a choice to make, and he said, no, he doesn't need to make this choice because the beauty of the gaycation is that it allows him to keep his marriage because it doesn't count. She said that's not the choice is whether he's leaving the house that night or she is. Only good thing he did was leave. Me and Sil spoke about it after that and I'm just, still utterly stunned. I understand she's gone to her parents for support. What exactly did we do to have our lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way? Per some advice, I'm going to look at devices and bank statements to see if I can find any definitive proof of cheating. After that, I suppose I'll figure out how I tell the boys why their father won't be coming home. Edit. Spoke to another Sil. My husband's family is older sister, him, younger sister, original Sil, and gave her a skimmed-down version of it. She asked her husband and thankfully he was deeply confused, but then mentioned about 2 years ago at a birthday party, he was approached by my husband and Bill about signing up to some online boot camp around BDSM crossdressing. He assumed they were taking the piss out of him, so told them to fuck off and never really thought of it again. The fact that this has been going on for that long is making me want to throw up. P.S. For the poster who said about divorce options, I'm actually going to look into adultery because plain and simple that's what this is. Top comments. Commenter 1. Your husband and Bill are deep in a shared delusion that's destroyed 2 families. Their identical talking points about surrender and destruction prove this was coordinated. They're not just planning to cheat, they're already involved in some online community that's warped their thinking. The fact that they both instantly launched into the same script about gaycations shows this isn't spontaneous. You made the right call, draining the account and changing the locks. Their attempts to flip this into accusations of homophobia show how desperately they're trying to avoid responsibility. The identical language, the bizarre aquarium and bird-watching analogies, the talk of surrender or be destroyed. They're in some online echo chamber that's completely divorced from reality. When your husband agreed to let you have a Manchester week while crying, he revealed the whole lie. He knows exactly what this is, cheating. He just wants permission to do it while denying you the same. The talk about hypnosis and permanent feminization reveals just how far this goes. Get a lawyer, protect your assets, and document everything. This will get worse before it gets better. Focus on protecting yourself and your children, because they're too far gone in their shared fantasy to see the destruction they're causing. What a pathetic hill for 2 men to die on. They destroyed their marriages, traumatized their families, and alienated their parents. All while insisting none of it counts, because they made up special rules about it. They want to cheat without consequences, and they've found an online community that validates this fantasy. My biological mother organized my birthday celebration around her stepdaughter's favorite pastimes, and I laughed in her face. When I was 6 years old, my parents divorced and went their own ways. They both started new families, although they obviously shared custody of me. My mother married a man, let's call him Robert, when I was 9 years old. He already had a daughter, Kira, who was 2 years my senior. When I was 8 years old, my dad proposed to Lila, a lovely woman, and they were married when I was 12. Lila and I have a lovely friendship. For me, she has been a real mother. She essentially assisted my dad in raising me, showed interest in my life, offered consolation, counseled me, and we had things in common. Together, we engaged in a variety of activities. She and I just discussed the prospect of her legally adopting me when I reach adulthood. Since my parents share custody, doing so today might be a little complicated legally, but I want it to be formal because she is my real mother. In contrast, I have virtually little relationship with my biological mother. I was made to spend some days with her, but we were never able to connect. Since Kira already had her own mother, she devoted all of her time to showing her love and care. Kira was always involved in activities, even when my mom tried to include me, and we only did things that she enjoyed. I eventually began turning down her invites and frequently asked if I might skip seeing her on the designated days. I preferred to stay at home with my father and Lila because I was nearly always disregarded or left out. Although he had to follow the judge's guidelines, my father always made an effort to understand me. As I grew older, he acknowledged that he was worried that if he allowed me to skip the visits, my mother may pursue some nasty legal action. My mom was probably going to do this. I didn't want to cause my father any trouble after hearing this because I understood his motivations. I stopped requesting things like that and complied with the timetable. Let's go right to the subject now. My 18th birthday is in 2 weeks. Fortunately, my birthday coincides with the days I'm supposed to be with my dad. Thus, a month ago, he, Lila, and I began organizing my birthday. Nothing too extravagant, just a get-together with loved ones at my favorite pizza joint. A laid-back evening where I can enjoy myself and the people I care about. I enjoy singing, and the place provides karaoke. We invited everyone, including my mother, after making reservations and organizing everything. To be honest, I didn't really want her there, but I reasoned that since I won't be bound by the judge's regulations once I turn 18, this might be the only time I had to include her. In order to finalize the guest list for the pizza establishment, we sent out the invites 2 days ago and have already received the majority of the responses. My mother was the only one who hadn't replied. I told my dad that I wouldn't press the issue because I was okay with her not wanting to come if she didn't reply. Although he didn't express it publicly, I believe my dad was also a little relieved. This afternoon was when the drama began. In a furious phone call, my mother accused me of being immature and advised me to never make plans without first informing her. She frequently forgot my birthday, so it was hypocritical of her to complain now. I was perplexed and reminded her that I've always planned my birthdays with Dad and Lila. She became very furious as a result. Claiming Kira had been crying ever since she saw the invitation, she began to attack me. Kira had apparently already organized an entire birthday celebration for me. I couldn't speak. There is no relationship between Kira and me. She is the quintessential pampered brat who craves attention, and my mother has always encouraged this behavior, which has made it worse. We've never had a good relationship. Why Kira would want to plan a birthday celebration for me was beyond me. It was illogical. She didn't tell me why she did it, so I asked her. She didn't really expect me to have no plans for my 18th birthday, did she? It was absurd. According to my mother, it was meant to be a surprise, and she assumed I didn't want to do anything for my birthday because I hadn't told her about my intentions. She could have just asked, after all. The worst part, though, the one that made me lose my temper, is about to happen. Perhaps in an attempt to make me feel bad about what I would have missed, my mother began to detail everything Kira had arranged for my celebration. Kira's favorite hobby was everything, even the things I didn't enjoy. For instance, she had made lunch reservations at a fish restaurant. I avoid eating fish because it makes me sick, not because I'm impulsive. Even though I've had it checked, my body just rejects it. I'm not allergic. She also organized an afternoon event at a horseback riding ranch close to the city where my mom currently resides. Horses don't appeal to me. I'm afraid of riding them or being around something that large, but it's not that I don't enjoy them as creatures. The final plan was to return to my mom's house for a BBQ meal in the backyard. I simply didn't want to see my mother more than was absolutely required. Furthermore, my mother added that invitations had already been sent out. I was stunned at this moment. Since none of my pals, my dad, or his family had gotten anything, I had to inquire as to who they had shipped them to. It turned out that the majority of the people on the guest list were Kira's friends, Robert's family, and my mother's family. Under the guise of celebrating my birthday, Kira essentially planned a party for herself. I was unable to contain myself any longer. I hung up the phone after laughing in my mother's face. The entire situation was too absurd to be real. After a little while, my dad approached me and told me that my mom had phoned him because I had made fun of her. He became agitated and began telling me that they were attempting to be kind for once, regardless of how I felt about my mother. I immediately stopped him and gave him the party's specifics, which my mother had reportedly forgotten. His face shifted rapidly. I've been listening to him rage at my mother for the past 20 minutes or more, and he just said, "I'm going to make a phone call." When Lila heard about the issue, she came to me. She acknowledged my point of view, but suggested that laughing in my mother's face and hanging up wasn't the most responsible way to react. She wasn't upset, but she was a little let down that I hadn't handled it more politely. I thought about what I had done after she had gone. I don't think discussing it with my mother would have helped, but perhaps I was a bit harsh. I could have handled it better though. I am beginning to believe that I may have been a bit of a jerk at that time. In all honesty, though, what did she anticipate? That I would bow down and take the scraps that were thrown to me? She was obviously not thinking at all. As usual, she was simply following Kira's lead. The problem is that individuals like that depend on others to comply without protest. They are unable to cope with the inevitable counterattack. Was I able to be more courteous? Yes, most likely. Was my response entirely warranted? Oh, of course. To any stranger on the internet who might be reading this, I'm proud that I defended myself. I've developed strong bonds with my father and stepmother, and I'm really proud of myself for resisting my mother's foolishness. I hope you have a wonderful birthday. What about my mother? If I decide to stop communicating with her after my birthday, she's going to have a terrible awakening. To be honest, it's advantageous to all parties. I can appreciate Lila's perspective, but there's no reason to hold back if your parents don't accept you at almost 18. Updated. I first discussed my response to my mother with Lila. Lila has consistently stressed the value of communication and urged me to discuss my issues in order to find solutions. I realize the context of her remark regarding my actions. But I also expressed my opinion to her, telling her that I was laughing because it was the only natural response I had to the situation my mother was describing, which was too ridiculous. I honestly wondered at one point, is this a joke or some kind of nasty prank? Is she inventing this, due to the fact that her foolishness was completely absurd? Although she acknowledged my viewpoint, Lila warned me that there will be times in life when I can't just chuckle and end the call. She was concerned about how I would respond and wanted to teach me how to deal with such circumstances in the future. I'm glad we had a conversation and were able to resolve the issue. I also discussed my dad's phone conversation with my mother. My mother apparently had a reason for everything. She said that Kira wanted to share her love of horseback riding with me, that she wanted to make a nice sisterly gesture on my special day, and that she didn't think my dislike of fish was a serious problem, just a whim. She even defended the fish restaurant by claiming that the fish they provided was the best in town. I threw up multiple times in front of her as a child, just because I was around areas that smelled strongly of fish, so that last excuse was a flagrant lie. She is well aware that I have a serious problem with it. My father said that Kira had obviously arranged the celebration for herself and that nothing they had prepared was done for me. He made the point that if none of my significant others were invited, it wasn't a party for me. Instead of reacting to this, my mother started to complain about how pampered and ungrateful I was. My dad then hung up the phone and told her to go to hell. I took another piece of advice from all of you after hearing this, and I wrote a letter to my mother. I decided to be mature this time and write it as courteously as I could. I stated I was sorry for laughing, but I explained that my only natural response to what she said was to laugh since it was so absurd. I reminded her that she doesn't know me at all, has never cared to get to know me, and never made an attempt to establish a relationship with me. I pointed out that they could enjoy the birthday celebration with their family and friends because it was full of things that Kira liked. Additionally, I informed her that her actions made it plain what her priorities were, so I rescinded her invitation to my pizza party and advised her not to bother attending. I said she wasn't on my list of priorities, which I now possessed. I informed her that I was already very happy having Lila as my mother. I asked her not to get in touch with me again and wished her well with her new family. I don't mind that she didn't reply after reading the message. She would have likely complained more about how spoiled and ungrateful I am if she had responded. She either doesn't understand or acts as though she doesn't, so there's no need in talking to her. But I feel more at peace now that I've made my feelings clear and this scenario is over. I'm grateful to everyone for assisting me in seeing that a definitive conclusion was required. My dad questioned my mom about how she could have thrown me a surprise party when I wasn't around. He also questioned how she could have believed that he wouldn't celebrate my 18th birthday. She clarified that Robert had made plans to come collect me on the morning of my birthday, but my dad took it a little personally. LOL. Under false pretenses, they planned to take me to my mother's house and explain the situation to Dad and Lila. To be honest, I have no idea how they anticipated this to function. No matter what reason they came up with, I would have flatly refused to visit my mom's house if it hadn't been her planned day. Above all, I would never have left Lila and Dad to celebrate my 18th birthday at my mother's house. A positive relationship between my mother and I would have been one thing, but that was certainly not the case. Robert is the only one I don't feel like blaming in all of this. Even though we were never close, he was always courteous to me when we shared a home. When I went to my mother's house, he even cleared out his study to give me a permanent place in his home. I don't blame him for anything because he always tried to be nice to me, even though we didn't form a stepdaughter-stepfather tie. He probably sincerely believes that the party is for me. We aren't close enough for him to understand my preferences unless my mother informed him, which I doubt she did. Fortunately, nothing of mine was left at my mother's place. My father's residence is where I keep all of my possessions. When I went to my mother's, I would usually fill my bag with the things I would need for the day and bring them back when I went to my father's. Because Kira's friends and Robert's family frequently visited, I never felt comfortable leaving anything with her because I didn't want my possessions in plain sight of strangers. That's about it for now. I hope my mother respects my decision to stop communicating with me and stops bothering me. Following the holidays, I would like to discuss the adoption with Leah. When we first discussed it, she appeared to be really happy. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their wisdom and nice thoughts. Your advice has improved my situational management. Although I acknowledge that I'm still a little immature, I believe this experience has allowed me to evolve and see the problem from a variety of angles. Best wishes to you? Yes, I considered contacting Robert, but I don't have his phone number. Since most of our meetings were friendly greets and light conversation, we never felt the need to stay in touch. The last time I left my mother's place, I believe Robert and I said our final goodbyes because I don't have Kira's number either. I don't spend a lot of time with my mother's relatives. My grandma, my aunt, and my uncle are the only 3 individuals involved. I've only seen my uncle a few times over the holidays when I'm spending time with my mother because he and his family reside a few hours away. Every time we interacted, it was short and far away. I only have friendly contact with my grandmother and aunt. They have given me money as birthday presents using my father's card, and we text each other holiday pleasantries, but that's about it. Even when we have met, our discussions have been informal and have only been exchanging life updates. They haven't texted me since the incident with my mother, and I didn't ask any of them until my 18th birthday. I believe they simply don't give a damn. Let's go on to the second tale. Before anyone told me directly, my wife's friend's Instagram account revealed our pregnancy, causing a flurry of activity and tears. She is 27 and I am 29. We both hail from the same hometown, but we currently reside in different cities. We have been dating for 4 years and married for 2. Because of work, I stayed behind while she attended a family gathering in our hometown. It finally happened after 3 months of trying to conceive. The manner I learned about it is the issue. In our group conversation, my friend thanked me by sharing a screenshot of an Instagram story that one of my wife's friends had shared. "You're going to be the best mom," was the caption on the photo, which included my wife sobbing and embracing a few of her pals. I immediately contacted her, and she picked up right away, saying, "I have news, babe." I only said, "I know, you're pregnant." "Wow, babe, how did you know?" I simply answered, "I saw it on Instagram." "Didn't think to give me a call first?" "What?" she asked. I said, "Yeah, but your friends posted something." "I didn't." "That's one way to know I'll become a father." I said, "Thank you," and hung up. I was enraged. She called repeatedly, but I didn't pick up until my sister called a short while later. My sister had just arrived at my in-laws' house, where everyone was fighting and panicking, and my wife was confined in her room, so she asked me what was going on. She exclaimed, "There's no way she would do that," when I told her what had happened. "Well, she did," I said. My sister promised to investigate the situation. She gave me a call back a little while later and gave me all the details. I had cooled down by then and assumed it was just a bad buddy who had chosen to post without authorization. However, my sister gave me the specifics. My wife was apparently having a late period, and while she was visiting a friend, they asked, "What if you're already pregnant?" They purchased numerous pregnancy tests, each of which produced good results. They emailed some local acquaintances to invite them over after becoming alarmed and telling her parents. Just 2 hours had gone by between the time she learned and the moment her buddies shared the information on Instagram. Before telling me, my wife told 10 or more individuals. For the record, when my sister came, she informed me that the reason for the disagreement was that the other friends were angry with the person who had posted on Instagram. Evidently, they were all upset with her and felt that was a horrible thing to do. However, they were equally baffled as to why my wife hadn't informed me earlier. When I eventually contacted my wife, she was in tears. She apologized and explained that she hadn't told me yet since she had been preparing to surprise me. I expressed skepticism, pointing out that she wouldn't have been prepared to tell me at the same moment I called if she had truly intended to surprise me. I told her I needed some time to reflect when she fell silent. She screamed that we needed to discuss it and that I couldn't just leave. "Why do we need to talk?" I answered. "So you can tell lies once more," and I ended the call. I've received a ton of messages, but I'm really worn out. I'm exhausted by this. I'm not sure why. I'm not a crier, therefore it's odd for me to cry at random. I feel like I've been struck by a truck, but this isn't supposed to be a big problem. "Hey, I know this sucks, and it was crappy of her, but don't let this ruin it for you," was the message my sister sent me, and it truly stuck. "You will become a father. You will make a fantastic father. This is fantastic. The knowledge that I will soon become a father is the only thing that keeps me going at the moment. This is what I've dreamed of, and my only wish is that the kid is well." To keep my wife from becoming very upset during the pregnancy, I'll probably swallow my pride and act as though nothing is wrong. But tomorrow, I'll do it. I'm going to just pout tonight. Edit. I didn't think much of posting this in the Reddit void, but when I woke up, I saw thousands of comments and dozens of direct messages. Holy. I sincerely appreciate your concern. Just to make a few points clear, is it possible that the baby is not mine? No chance. Classic Reddit LOL. She works from home, but that isn't possible because our house is equipped with home security cameras. Girls' nights are not something she does. I work with a female coworker who happens to be her best friend in the city where we live, and the three of us frequently hang out. They rarely spend time together in person, but they frequently text one another. If they do, I'll be in the adjacent room at our house. The clingiest person on the planet is my wife. She texts me every 30 minutes while I'm at work. She's usually in the same room as me or cuddling up to me when I'm at home. She holds my hand or arm when we're out. Most of the time, I genuinely enjoy it. I feel appreciated. However, it could be excessive. I even asked whether the argument we had weeks ago was the reason she didn't inform me straight away. However, it most likely isn't. Regarding her buddies, they are all really kind individuals. They've been in my life for a while. Some of the people in my sister's friend group have known each other since they were 12 years old. The only person who lives in a distant city is my wife. When she is in town, they always spend a lot of time together. I can't stress enough how completely out of character this is for her. Like everyone else, she has numerous shortcomings, but being careless is not one of them. She wouldn't intentionally do this, which is why I woke up in the middle of the night with the thought that I could be mistaken. No way. I texted her to let her know that everything was good and that I would make the 4-hour drive down there to speak with her. In fact, she asked if she might call when she was awake. After doing so, she expressed her desire to return home. I informed her that I will be picking her up. "Are we all right?" she questioned. She broke down in tears as soon as I said yes. I informed her that we would have to discuss it, but that I was thrilled and eager to meet her. After that, she became a little more composed. Update 1. Hi there once more. I'm here to give you an update now that everything has calmed down and I believe I have all the facts. My wife waited for me on the sidewalk when I arrived at my in-laws' house. She threw herself at me, apologized repeatedly, and simply gave me a hug while expressing her regret. Before our conversation, I told her I was quite exhausted and wanted to take a nap when we got to her room. We held each other while we slept. When we woke up, our conversation felt like a never-ending cycle in which I asked her what had happened and she responded that she was foolish and to blame. She insisted that since she had ruined a significant event in our lives, it didn't matter what occurred. She simply reiterated that she made a mistake and that nothing else mattered when I persisted in inquiring. She finally admitted that she didn't want to make excuses for me and that accepting responsibility and offering an apology was the proper course of action. After a while, I gave in and told her that everything was okay and that she was forgiven. Nevertheless, I wanted to speak with her buddy, who spent the entire day with her and purchased the pregnancy test for her. According to the friend's narrative, they freaked out for an hour and discussed how to surprise or tell me when my wife tested positive. When my mother-in-law finally arrived home, they all told her. To talk about how to inform me, they made the decision to bring a few girlfriends around. The friend discussed all of their opinions, and I completely agree with her. She added that the group had discussed it, which I was unaware of at the time, and that they should all be silent since we hadn't chosen when to make the announcement. It seems that the one girl who shared it on Instagram did it intentionally. At that time, they were even talking about methods to tell me with her there, even though she had been instructed not to speak. When she uploaded the photo, another buddy had just arrived and was informed of the situation. She immediately decided to publish about it for whatever reason. She first said she was unaware that she was not permitted to post it when they approached her. After maintaining that falsehood for some time, she just told everyone she didn't give a damn and walked away. We haven't heard from her since she blocked everyone in the group. Whether she was jealous of my wife or something else, no one knows why she did it. Right now, we don't give a damn. We too have her blocked, and we do not wish to communicate with her. The friend's account was later verified by my sister. She thought my wife had just told everyone and had forgotten to tell me when she originally called me with the details. However, after speaking with my mother-in-law and other friends, she shared the same tale with me. In addition, my mother-in-law, the friend I spoke with, and another acquaintance informed me that when I phoned my wife, she essentially said, "Screw it, I'm telling him right now." And she was quite eager to do so. During our return ride home, my wife and I spoke once more, although I already knew the majority of the details. Her side of the story was much the same as what my sister and the buddy told me. She apologized profusely once more and insisted that I was her top priority and that this was one of the worst things she had ever done. At her urging, we have a couples counseling session scheduled for next week. She feels that I need a place to completely express my thoughts, even though I don't think it's necessary. She fears that I'm holding everything inside and that I forgave her too quickly. To be honest, I'm already willing to forgive her and put this as a one-time incident because she cares about my sentiments. Additionally, we made our first visit to an obstetrician, not just because it's the correct thing to do, but also because I was warned by many about the dangers of miscarriages in the first trimester of pregnancy. The doctor indicated it was a little early for an appointment, and my wife's last period was approximately 6 weeks ago. However, after conducting numerous tests, they were able to determine that my wife is definitely pregnant. Everything appears to be going okay so far. My parents rejected me when I chose a blue-collar life, but now they want back in. Am I the asshole for refusing to help? Growing up in a wealthy Chicago suburb with a father who is a well-known professor at Northwestern University and a mother who is the stereotypical faculty wife, I, 35F, have always been the challenging twin. Early on, I discovered that I was supposed to take a very certain route. The ideal daughter, my 35-foot twin sister, accepted everything our parents desired. She epitomizes all of our parents' dreams, married a wealthy lawyer, and lives in a lovely home in Lincoln Park. From my earliest recollections, our house resembled a meticulously organized museum, with each item having its own location. While my mother's realm was the spotless living room where she invited faculty spouses for afternoon tea, my father's study was crammed with leather-bound volumes and academic honors. My sister and I were expected to be living examples of their success even as kids, well-groomed, well-behaved, and constantly successful. Early on, the difference between us became apparent. My sister was very good in charm school and piano recitals, but I liked to lose myself in science fiction books and watch motorcycle races on TV in secret. Our mother's constant correction was the answer. Sit up straight, sweetheart, don't cross your legs, cross your ankles. Every instruction was given with a smile that never quite made it to her eyes. Do try to smile more. The pressure definitely increased in high school. My sister became a member of every club that was relevant to her, including debate team, student government, and Young Republicans. Despite being compelled to do so, I didn't want to. I proposed setting up a fundraiser for a nearby motorcycle maintenance training program for at-risk teenagers during a particularly memorable student council meeting. For weeks, I was plagued by the terrified expression on my mother's face when she learned about it. The impact of our father was not limited to our household. He was well known in Chicago's intellectual and corporate circles as a renowned economics professor at Northwestern. These relationships served as the foundation for our futures and were more than just social capital. Through his network, every summer internship, college application, and employment opportunity was meticulously planned. I can still clearly recall the day he declared that he had gotten me accepted into Northwestern's economics program. I was shoving the remnants of my mother's expertly presented roast beef around in our formal dining room. He said, "It's all arranged. without raising his gaze from his wineglass. Professor Richardson owes me a favor. You'll start in the fall. From the other side of the table, my sister, who is already in her second year of business administration, smiled. I could feel the walls closing in, yet I was at a loss for words. My life has always gone like that. I follow the meticulously prepared tracks even if my inner voice begs for a different course. Because it's what responsible young ladies do, I earned my MBA. I choose to work in corporate strategy at one of the best companies in Chicago because it's a fantastic opportunity. My entire career has been a masterclass in following expectations rather than pursuing my own desires. My everyday schedule is the ideal representation of the life I should aspire to. My wake-up time is 5:30 a.m. My mother picked my high-rise apartment on Michigan Avenue since it's a popular place for young, successful professionals to dwell. During required shopping trips with my mother and sister, I wore designer suits that were more expensive than other people's monthly rent. My mother constantly adds, "Appearance is everything in the business world, dear," suggesting a more conservative heel height or changing my collar. People who are living examples of what my parents want me to be are all around me at work. On most days, I hardly notice the breathtaking view of Lake Michigan from my 47th floor corner office. Rather, I meet with people who seem to actually care about quarterly estimates and shareholder value for hours on end to discuss market strategies and profit margins. With a passion I can't seem to summon, they enthuse about their vacation houses in Lake Forest, their children's private schools, and their memberships in country clubs. In an effort to keep us close, our mother insists that my sister come to lunch with me every Wednesday. Perfectly groomed and typically fresh from a board meeting at one of her numerous charitable organizations, she comes at precisely 12:30. She tells me about her picture-perfect life over expensive salads at the trendy restaurant below, including her husband's recent high-profile case, their plans to buy a second house in Aspen, and the prestigious daycare where their child is already on the wait list. She gently wiped her lips with a handkerchief last week and advised me, "You should join the junior league. Mother thinks it would be good for your social connections. Besides, you need to start thinking about marriage. All the best eligible men are involved in charity work." I instinctively agreed, as I've come to do when my family offers advice on how to live my life. In all honesty, this world of manufactured perfection is smothering me. While my colleagues enthusiastically debate market penetration tactics and hostile takeovers in meetings, I can't help but stare at the construction workers in the building across the street. They're making something substantial, doing something real. I can be so envious of them at times that it hurts. I found myself scribbling motorcycle ideas in the margins of my notes during a particularly dull budget discussion last month. Upon noticing, my direct report looked at me with anxiety. I promptly turned to a blank page and made myself concentrate on the supply chain efficiency optimization PowerPoint presentation. I heard him express concern to another management later that day over my dedication to the company's mission. Weekends are the worst. I'm stuck driving through the city's industrial areas while my sister and her husband go to country club parties and charity galas. I pretend that I'm working late, but in reality, I'm drawn to the unadulterated, authentic elements of Chicago that they deny exist. I observe those who make things with their hands and appear to truly like what they do, such as welders at their shops, artists in their studios, and mechanics working on automobiles. Everything changed last night. My BMW, my father's thoughtfully selected graduation present, began to make a menacing grinding sound after yet another heartbreaking day of acting as though I cared about market forecasts. I was in the wrong part of town, as my mother used to say, but I had to stop or risk getting stuck. Just before closing time, I stopped into a nearby auto repair shop and saw the check engine light flash mockingly. I met Jake at that time. With a welding torch in hand, Jake, 35, was the final guy left working, hunched over a handmade motorbike frame. Jake was authentic, work boots, faded trousers, and hands that demonstrated he truly made a living, in contrast to the polished business people my parents are constantly attempting to pair me with. He looked up and grinned, but it wasn't the staged smile I see at business events. It was sincere, it extended to his eyes. "Timing belt's about to go," he observed, having listened to my engine for less than a minute. "I can fix it now if you want to wait." Simple competence without any corporate language or ulterior motives. Even though I could hear my mother's disapproving voice in my mind about being in that neighborhood after dark, I found myself nodding. We chatted while he worked. Jake shared with me his experiences progressing from simple welding to more complex metalwork, his aspirations to start his own custom fabrication business, and his passion for creating things by hand. He showed me the motorcycle he was restoring, which fused contemporary engineering with vintage design. My practiced presentations about market expansion strategies seemed insignificant in comparison to the enthusiasm in his voice as he described the technical specifics. He said, "Want to see something cool?" He fixed my car and then showed me a part of the business with a number of finished projects. Every piece was distinct, the ideal fusion of creativity and utility. After years of moving papers in my corner office, I felt more a part of actual production as I ran my fingers over the beautiful curves of the metal. We ended up sipping coffee from the shop's antiquated vending machine and spoke until long after midnight. Jake told me about his upbringing with a single mother who was a nurse, his time at community college studying his craft, and the joy he gets from making something enduring by hand. I started talking more about my life, including the oppressive expectations, the constant comparisons to my sister, and the increasing sense that I was living someone else's fantasy. "You know," he began slowly, "metal's interesting. People think it's rigid, unchangeable, but with the right heat and pressure, it can become anything. Sometimes the most beautiful pieces come from metal that's been stressed and reformed." I did not fail to notice the metaphor. I've been seeing Jake practically every day since that night. After work in the shop, he has been teaching me the fundamentals of welding. The process itself is immensely fulfilling, the concentration needed, the observable outcomes, the way two disparate parts are permanently fused together. In contrast, nothing feels real in the fleeting realm of business strategy. Jake took me on my first motorbike ride around Lake Michigan last weekend. There were no conference calls, shareholder expectations, or family pressures, just the wind, the road, and the sensation of being fully alive. The freedom was exhilarating. In Wisconsin, we made a stop at a tiny diner, the kind of establishment my mother would never enter. It was the best coffee I've ever had at any of Chicago's best eateries. Jake is taking me to meet his mother tomorrow. Despite being retired, she continues to volunteer at the nearby hospital. Instead of the required awe I give my parents at Sunday dinners, he speaks about her with such sincere love and respect. I've never been more anxious before a corporate presentation than I am now. What's coming, I know. My folks will need to hear about Jake soon. My mother will weep, my father will threaten to cut me off, and my sister will be appalled. However, I'm prepared to make my own decisions for the first time in my life. I feel like I'm finally becoming into the person I was destined to be, not the person my parents wanted me to be, when Jake smiles at me. Perhaps having the guts to live genuinely is what true success looks like, rather than having a prominent location or corner office. I feel more alive than ever, yet I'm also scared. First update. 3 months have passed since my previous post, and a lot has changed. When I eventually told my parents about Jake, it was a complete disaster, worse than I could have imagined. I decided to tell them during our Sunday meal, which was required. My father's face went a shade of crimson I had never seen before when I revealed that Jake was a welder. My mother let her sterling silver fork fall to the exquisite china, clattering. Like a gunshot, the boom reverberated across our suddenly quiet dining room. My father spat the phrase, "a welder," as if it were toxic. "After everything we've invested in you, after all the connections I've built." For about 20 minutes, he launched into a tirade about family reputation and social status. My mother would alternate between giving me looks of complete betrayal and wiping her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. At first, my sister, who was there with her lawyer husband, genuinely chuckled, assuming it was a joke. Her face took on an expression of sheer fear as she realized I was genuine. She growled from the other side of the table. "You can't be serious. What about Richard from the golf club? His family's been asking about you." When I told Jake that I was thinking of quitting my corporate position to assist him in launching his custom fabrication company, the situation became heated. My father got to his feet so suddenly that his chair toppled over. "You are no longer welcome in this family if you pursue this absurd fantasy," he said, his voice shaking with anger. The peace that swept over me at hearing it was unexpected, but I had anticipated the threat. My sister's expensive outfit, my mother's exquisitely placed flowers, the oil paintings, and the crystal chandelier in the formal dining room all seemed to me to be of no use anymore. I said, "Then I guess this is goodbye," and got to my feet. Despite my mother's theatrical gasp, I kept gathering my belongings. My sister followed me into the foyer as I made my way to the door. She cautioned, "You're making a huge mistake. You're throwing away everything we were raised to be." "No," I said, getting stronger every step of the way. "I'm finally becoming who I really am. There have been many developments over the last 3 months. To the surprise of my coworkers, I left my corporate job. An emergency board meeting was called in response to my resignation letter, and my former employer continues to send me letters every week urging me to come back. Jake and I have been working tirelessly to launch our own company. In an industrial neighborhood, we discovered the ideal location. Although it needs some maintenance, there is a lot of potential and the rent is fair. My commercial experience is proven surprisingly helpful in establishing up our organization, and Jake's underwater welding talent has already drawn several significant clients. Jake's mother has provided the most surprising assistance. Warm, accepting, and truly interested in who I am rather than what she believes I should be, she is everything my mother is not. She arrived with homemade sandwiches and old trousers to assist us with painting the office area of our new store. I had never felt more at home in my parents' estate than I did when she embraced me, splattered with paint. Through her husband's legal practice, my sister issued me a formal letter last week requesting that I change my ways and rejoin the family. She reminded us of our family's reputation in Chicago society and provided a comprehensive list of available corporate jobs and eligible bachelors. I lit the new wood stove at our workshop using the letter. Finding a community I was unaware of has been the most unexpected development. We have been greeted warmly by our neighbors in the industrial area. We get coffee in the mornings from the car repair shop next door, and the local artists collective has already commissioned a number of custom metal works for their next show. Next month, Jake and I will tie the knot. There won't be a country club reception, a beautiful gown, or the society wedding my parents have been planning for me since I was born. In the workshop, surrounded by the things we've created together and the individuals who genuinely support us, we're holding a modest ceremony instead. The invitation was sent back unopened by my parents. Another legal letter from my sister threatened to declare me mentally incompetent. However, I can tell I've made the correct decision when I watch Jake work, witness his commitment to his trade, and experience the joy of creating something tangible. I saw my reflection on a polished metal piece this morning while assisting Jake with a challenging welding project. I felt more attractive and more like myself than ever before, even though I hardly recognized myself, work boots, jeans, and almost pulled back hair. Even if my family no longer approves of me, I've gained authenticity, which is far more valuable. In my new life, every burn from hot metal, every callus on my hands, and every late-night business brainstorming session are all medals of glory. Second update. After 6 months of marriage, Jake and I have experienced some unexpected changes in our lives. The most exciting news is that Jake's underwater welding certification has opened up contracts we never thought were feasible. Due in large part to Jake's specialist abilities being in great demand for marine infrastructure projects, our tiny business has grown quicker than we could have imagined. We secured a significant underwater repair contract with the Chicago Port Authority last month. I recognize the irony. The same blue-collar jobs that my parents mocked now generate more money each year than my previous corporate job did. With more specialized tasks, our custom fabrication business is flourishing, and Jake's salary has risen to $150,000. However, success has presented unforeseen difficulties. Surprisingly, word of our expanding company made its way to my former corporate circles in Chicago's industrial area. My old coworkers have begun contacting me, some with sincere congrats, others with barely concealed interest in our small business. My former boss called last week to propose a consultancy arrangement. I declined courteously. Our appearance in a local business publication was the biggest step forward. The article highlighted our special blend of technical know-how and business savvy, with a focus on successful career transitions. For the first time in months, my sister texted me the morning it was released. The article was read by me. "Congratulations, I guess," she wrote. "Jake's mother is no longer only his mother-in-law. I've always hoped I had a parent like her. She frequently stops by the shop with handmade food and a sincere interest in what we do. She recently assisted us in setting up a training program for aspiring welders, a cause close to her heart after witnessing the transformative power of welding on her son's life. Our workshop has developed into a gathering place for the neighborhood. In addition to hiring 3 local apprentice welders, we have begun providing weekend workshops for those with an interest in metalworking. We have worked with a number of local artists on public art projects, and the owner of the car repair company next door sends his younger mechanics to learn from Jake. The work's physical demands have altered me in unexpected ways. Work clothes that are useful have taken the place of my luxury suits, which are still hanging unworn at the back of our wardrobe. I have developed muscles I never knew existed, and my hands are now calloused. There are more than just physical improvements though. I now carry myself with a confidence that comes from doing something real rather than merely promoting papers. An unusual encounter occurred last week. At our workshop, I was overseeing a delivery when a beautiful Mercedes arrived. My sister's husband came out, looking totally out of place in his fitted suit. His legal firm wants to hire us to do some underwater inspections on their marina properties, therefore he would bring a business proposal. It was an uncomfortable but illuminating conversation. He acknowledged that everyone was surprised by our achievement. He hesitated before departing, saying, "Your sister follows your business in the news, but your father still won't talk about it." "You seem different," he said to her. "Happier?" My mother would be horrified by the rhythm that has been established in our home life. We decided to put practicality ahead of elegance and purchased a modest home in a developing neighborhood. Our furniture is a combination of items we welded ourselves and old treasures. Although the garden isn't as well kept as my parents' estate, it is thriving with herbs and vegetables that we utilize on a daily basis. The wedding pictures, which were taken by a local artist who captured the genuine moments, arrived lately rather than by a society photographer. One shows Jake and I in safety gear, totally focused on the task at hand as he teaches me how to weld an ornamental arch for the ceremony. Another depicts us dancing in the workshop with our chosen family and our creations. As I look at them, I see that we have created something that, in spite of their wealth, my parents never had. True happiness. We've begun discussing starting a family, which raises more questions. I consider the principles we wish to impart. The value of creating, pursuing your own path, and gauging success based on fulfillment rather than prestige. My own parents have no idea that they could ever have grandkids, and Jake's mother breaks down whenever we bring up the subject. I found out yesterday that our workshop had received an invitation to my sister's forthcoming charity event. The note in the envelope wasn't what I expected, but it was addressed in her well-known handwriting. "I miss you," she sent. I haven't replied yet, but I said, maybe we could talk. A part of me understands that I can never return to my former self, but another part of me wants to make amends. Our most recent endeavor is a massive public artwork for the city that consists of several metal sculptures that symbolize change. I consider how much we've changed together as I watch Jake work on it, transforming metal into flowing shapes that seem to defy their material nature. Me from a corporate puppet to someone who at last feels real, and him from a talented carpenter to a prosperous business owner. The silent moment when we all shut up the workshop is the highlight of the day. Looking at what we've created, both the actual company and our life together, makes me feel accomplished in a way that no corporate success ever did. Even though my hands are rough today and my clothes smell like metal and honest labor, my heart is fuller than it was in my past existence. Life tends to come full circle. I hadn't seen my parents in more than a year until they unexpectedly dropped by our studio yesterday. They appeared smaller in some way. Northwestern's scandal had cost them dearly. Due to claims of harassment, my father, who was once a proud professor, was forced to leave. The very thing they valued above all else, their social standing, had fallen apart. My mother's fancy shoes were totally out of place on the store floor, and they stood clumsily in our workspace. Their superbly designed clothing stood out sharply against the background of our welding tools and ongoing projects. First to speak, my father's voice lacked the authority it usually possessed. In between my mother's hardly contained cries, the story poured out, "We need your help." My sister's husband, the accomplished lawyer they had always commended, refused to assist until they paid his entire legal bill after the scandal surfaced. My sister sided with her husband when they were unable to pay his rates. They were ordered to vacate the guest home at my sister's house where they had been residing. My mother remarked sourly, "Your sister believes it will harm her reputation." The irony of what she said didn't escape my notice after everything we did for her. I recalled all the times they had cautioned me that picking Jake would harm the family's reputation. My father surveyed our studio, his gaze resting on the honors we had just received for our unique workmanship. The wall was framed with an article from the local newspaper about our success. From corporate to creative, local welding business makes waves. He said the words, "We thought perhaps we could stay with you for a while, with difficulty." Behind me, I sensed Jake's steady, encouraging presence as usual. He quit his job, but he didn't get involved, so I was free to manage my family the way I wanted. That small gesture of respect and trust said a lot about our relationship. When I truly looked at my parents, I realized what they were no longer able to conceal. The flawless facade was crumbling, and the fine clothing were a little shabby. They were here because they had nowhere else to go, not because they had accepted me or my decisions. "No," I answered in a firm voice. "You can't stay with us." The phrase released something I had been holding on to for too long, like a key turning in a lock. "You threw me out of the family when I chose this life. You can't come back now just because you need something." My mom's face fell flat. She begged, "But we're your parents." A hint of my father's former authority emerged as his face darkened. "After everything we've done for you." I cut in. "That's exactly the problem. Everything you did was to control me, to make me fit your image of success. When I found my own way, you disowned me. And now that my way has proved successful, you want back in?" I pointed to our workshop. "See all this? The business you thought was beneath you? It's thriving? The husband you rejected? He's more successful than most of your country club friends. The life you said would embarrass the family? It's featured in business magazines. But that's different, countered my father. We can see now that you've made something of yourself. No, I interrupted him once more. That's not different at all. You still don't get it. I didn't need to prove anything. My worth isn't measured by income or social status. I'm happy because I'm finally living authentically, not because we're successful. After a while, they departed, my father stiff with rage and my mother in tears. As we saw their fancy car drive out, Jake gave me a hug. Simply, "You okay?" he inquired. I was more than fine, I had freedom. As we shut down the store later that night, I reflected on the path that had led me here. The corporate job I had detested, the familial pressure I had fled, the love I had discovered, and the company we had established. I had been moving toward myself with each step I took away from my parents' expectations. I came to a surprising realization while examining our most recent project, a sophisticated metal sculpture that the city had commissioned. Life occasionally requires extreme heat and pressure to create something beautiful, much like the metal we deal with. That heat had been my parents' rejection, and I had grown stronger and more authentic as a result. They failed to realize that they were giving me a cage by attempting to reintegrate me into their culture. Regardless of how plated. With a partner who loves me for who I am rather than what he wants me to be, my home is now here, surrounded by steel and sparkles. I appreciate the Reddit community's support during this trip. Your advice and support kept me going when I was having self-doubt. I'm thankful for this platform that allows me to share my story because sometimes the most difficult decisions are the best ones. To everyone who must make similar decisions, remain loyal to who you are. Although the journey may be more difficult, the end result is worthwhile. My parents favored my twin sister. So much that they spent my wedding budget on her, so I cut them off after refusing my mother's selfish request. I, 23F, have a twin sister named Allison with whom I am not on good terms. I'm not even on speaking terms with her or my parents. Despite how I've been treated in the past, we used to be on good terms, but I've kept my distance for the last 2 years. They hadn't bothered to contact me either, until recently. Allison is 12 minutes older than me and is therefore the golden kid by default. My parents only wanted one child because that was what they had planned for, and they didn't have the resources to support two. By the time they discovered it was twins, it was too late, and my mother did not want to take any chances. In high school, I learned about this from my intoxicated uncle at a Thanksgiving celebration. That was pretty much the day I gave up trying to win my folks over. They did what seemed most natural in those circumstances. They had 2 children but chose to adore only one. That was Allison, not me. Allison and I had an incredible sibling rivalry from childhood. To impress our parents, I would try to outdo all she could do. But the more I achieved, the more they appeared to despise me for outperforming their golden child. To be honest, Allison had no interest in competing with me. She was only looking for validation. She claimed to be concerned about the rivalry, but her main skill was manipulation. She was brilliant at convincing people that she was offended when I outdid her. This resulted in many, including our parents, relatives, and even some classmates, supporting her feelings while tearing me down to help her feel better. Finally, the competition provided me with good grades and several extracurricular accomplishments to demonstrate my superiority. Meanwhile, Allison captured my parents' attention, affirmation, and sympathy. I was always cast as the villain, making her feel inadequate. Looking back, I don't think I'd swap what I've achieved, but I wish I had rubbed my success in her face more at the time. 2 years ago, we turned 21. By then, we'd both graduated. Allison from a conventional college and me from one of the state's best business schools. I was the valedictorian and received a scholarship, so my parents saved a lot of money on my education. Call me crazy, but I honestly believed my parents would be proud of me. They were not. Instead, they concentrated solely on Allison and her troubles. Allison had barely made ends meet and was looking for work, only to be turned down again. I, on the other hand, was already working from home as an intern for a corporation. Despite my accomplishments, my parents did not bother to congratulate me. Instead, they were absorbed with concern for Allison's future. I was not surprised, but rather disappointed. I was still living with my parents and hadn't saved enough money to move out, so I chose to keep my feelings to myself. But after our 21st birthday, I couldn't anymore. I expected them to accomplish something significant for us. However, the day before our birthday, I learned that everyone had left me at home alone. All they left me was a note saying they were going to the beach with Allison and her friends and would be back in a few days. I vividly recall being completely devastated when I read that note. They had taken Allison and her pals on a beach trip, but all I received was a happy birthday card and a $50 gift card. Many aspects of my childhood had been unfair, but here was where I drew the line. It was so disheartening and callous that I decided to leave that day and never look back. I had a few friends who were ready to let me stay with them until I could find and afford my own place. It wouldn't take long because the firm where I was interning was likely to recruit me full-time once the internship concluded. I only needed a place to reside for 2 months at the most. I packed my belongings and moved in with a friend without informing my parents or sister, and I have not looked back since. They didn't miss me enough to want me to come back. They did phone me on my birthday, the day after I moved out, but not to wish me. They said they'd be returning shortly and recommended I hire a plumber to fix the tap. I informed them that I was no longer living at home and had moved out, hoping that this information would elicit a response from them. But no such luck. My folks seemed fine with it, and Allison didn't mind. That was it. That was my final proper conversation with my family. Since then, I haven't seen them or heard from them again. My friends occasionally told me about Allison, which kept me up to date on her life, but that was about it. They knew nothing about my parents, and my parents knew nothing about me. I've worked hard for the past 2 years and finally got my own place. It's hardly a mansion, but it's a lovely apartment in a desirable neighborhood. The rent is reasonable for my wage, which is fantastic because most people my age haven't been able to accomplish this as quickly. I'm pleased with how my life has turned out, and I've done my best to keep my family out of my thoughts. Allison recently married a businessman nearly 10 years older than her and is now living it out in California. I thought everything was fine in my family until 2 days ago, when I received a call from my uncle. He told me I needed to come visit my parents right away because they had been in a terrible car accident and wanted to see me. I went to the hospital as soon as possible since, of course, I'm not so heartless. When I arrived, I discovered that they had already been in the hospital for a few days and were recovering from their injuries. A truck had hit their car. They had survived, but with significant injuries. They didn't have health insurance because my father had always believed that if we looked after ourselves, we wouldn't need to go to the hospital. This was by far one of the most ridiculous opinions I've ever heard. My parents immediately phoned my sister, but she informed them that she would not return or assist them. Apparently, it was tacky of our parents to seek financial assistance from her wealthy husband so soon after their marriage. She did not want her spouse to think she was a gold digger. She also didn't want to travel back since she couldn't leave her home and 2 children, who weren't even her own. They were her husband's children from a previous marriage, but she was too preoccupied with playing happy family with her husband's family to see her own parents in the hospital following a tragic automobile accident. She couldn't have helped, even if she had wanted to. Without her husband's assistance, she would not have been able to purchase even the flight tickets back home. After all, she's now a stay-at-home parent, caring for children who aren't her own. So much for being the favorite daughter and golden child. I couldn't believe they didn't even call me first. It became even more irritating when my uncle informed me that my parents now expected me to finance their medical expenditures. It's a large sum of money, and if I agreed, I'd have a difficult time recovering financially. I don't want to spend so much money, especially on people who have never cared about me or shown me love throughout my life. I know they have other family members that can care for them. Even if I don't pay, somebody else will. However, my parents appear to be more worried with the shame of begging others for money. They warned me that borrowing money from others would be more humiliating than borrowing from me because they'd have to repay it sooner than I would. That is what they said when they asked me to pay their debts. They even assured that I would receive my money back quickly. I do not know what to do. I'm in a bad situation. I can either disgrace my parents by refusing to pay their medical bills and focusing on myself, or I may pay for them, lose my money, and then wait indefinitely for them to repay it. To be completely honest, I don't want to help them at all. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and I've had a horrible relationship with my family for as long as I can remember. They're like strangers to me now, so I don't feel inclined to assist them. But if I don't help, am I no better than Allison? That would be difficult to accept. Is it wrong of me not to want to help my parents pay their hospital costs after such a tragic accident? Update number 1. Hello there, I've decided not to aid my parents. It was a difficult decision to make, but I was confident that their bills would be handled by someone else. They have nothing to worry about. They just contacted me because they didn't want to ask their other relatives. They were overly egoistic. I haven't told them about my decision yet. How do you tell your family that you're not going to help your parents pay for their medical bills after such a tragic accident? It's been nearly 5 days since I met them. After reading the comments, I realized I was still subconsciously competing with Allison. Because she didn't help our parents, I felt compelled to step up and prove that I was the better daughter, or whatever. I guess I'll never be able to get rid of that competitive streak, no matter how hard I try. It's simply who I am now. The majority of the comments criticized my parents' lack of health insurance, and I agree. It was quite silly of my father to discourage it. If I had been a part of their lives, I would have ensured they were insured. He didn't even have his automobile insured since he believed he was such a good driver. They're happy the collision was caused by the truck driver, since else they'd have had to pay for the auto repairs themselves. As for my parents' financial position, which many of you have inquired about, I would say they are fine. They are neither rich nor poor. My father is the head of sales at his company, while my mother works in human resources at a smaller firm. Their combined salary is sufficient to allow them to live well, especially since they are no longer responsible for supporting me or Allison. Allison and I did not have to worry about money growing up, but we also couldn't afford to live extravagantly. We were middle class, and my parents still are. I don't see why they can't pay their own medical bills. If they can borrow money and promise to repay it eventually, they will undoubtedly be able to pay their own debts. They haven't provided me a clear explanation for why they can't, and I doubt I will ever find out. Update number 2. I told my parents that I would not fund their bills. They had been contacting me for the previous week, and yesterday I knew I couldn't just ignore them and wait till they were released from the hospital. So I answered their calls and told them I'd thought about it and didn't feel compelled to help. As expected, they did not take it well. My mother tore into me, shrieking as loudly as she could with her broken ribs. She called me ungrateful and used the usual slurs. My father, on the other hand, just told me that I was no longer his daughter and hung up once my mother had finished yelling. It didn't hurt like I expected. Honestly, it had been a long time since I felt like their daughter. I can't recall when I last felt loved by my parents. They hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, on purpose, because I moved out after they snubbed me on a significant birthday. In many ways, I had never truly had parents. I'm just going to keep living my life as I have for the last 2 years, and maybe even before that. This decision has little impact on me, despite my parents' expectations. Unfortunately, after my talk with my parents, my uncle called to give me another earful. I hung up after a few seconds because I didn't want this from him either. They can think anything they want about me. It doesn't matter anymore. Later, my uncle texted me to let me know that my parents might still ask other family members for money. He also indicated that my parents had decided to use the wedding fund they had put up for me and Allison. They had already spent more than half of it on Allison's wedding, and what remained was squandered on a trip to Europe. That's why they had almost little savings left and couldn't meet their medical bills. So, the riddle is solved. Of course, my uncle told me all of this to make me feel terrible, but all I felt was relief that I hadn't wasted my hard-earned money on their expenses. They had carelessly wasted their own cash, which was not my fault. It was not my responsibility that they did not have insurance owing to their erroneous ideas. They could beg money from family or go to hell, but I was not going to give them anything. They were no longer entitled to anything from me, including my time and money. Update number 3. Hey, something pretty strange happened today, and I need to get it off my chest. I haven't been able to inform my friends about what has been going on, because most of the people I know have only known me for a short time. I don't think I want to share anything about my family history with these people, so Reddit is all I have. It's been about 2 weeks since I last spoke with my folks. Allison showed up at my apartment a few hours ago, around the evening. Her unexpected visit astonished me, first and foremost because I did not expect her to know where I lived. Apparently, one of our high school friends told her about the neighborhood where I lived, and she asked around to find out exactly where I was. That is a lot of effort for her to do simply to meet me, of all people. She looked and acted far differently than I remembered. She's gotten more polished and sophisticated, which is a significant change from the way she used to speak in high school. Now she sounds more ladylike and behaves better. Her fashion sense has evolved, as has her jewelry, and her makeup appears more sophisticated. It felt as if I wasn't even speaking to Allison. But one thing has not changed: who she is as a person. I guess you can't put cosmetics on your heart and instruct people to name it Mrs. Davis, as she did to herself. Her personality and ideas have undoubtedly not changed. She knocked on my door, and I let her in. I was startled to see her, but also interested as to why she had stopped by. I decided to hear her out. After some small conversation about her life, in which she unpromptedly told me everything she'd been up to and boasted about how wonderful her life was as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers married to a wealthy man, I politely nodded through her presentation. She talked about how she had nothing to worry about but her cuticles and even began urging me to do the same, telling me how underappreciated being a traditional housewife was. I couldn't wait for her to stop chatting about extraneous topics and get to the issue. Finally, After roughly 15 minutes of talking about her life, she explained why she was here. Apparently, she had returned to see our parents since they had begged her to do so following the accident. They did not want her money. They simply wanted her to be there for them. After 2 weeks, she decided to return, and while she was here, she thought she'd pay me a visit so we could finally bury the hatchet. Thus far, so good. But then she began complaining. She claimed our parents were too needy and disrespectful of her new family. She went on and on about how she had to leave her 2 babies with their nanny merely to visit them. She stated she loathed our parents for forcing her to choose between them and her children. I can never understand why she keeps referring to them as her children when they are clearly not hers. They are her husband's children from his previous marriage. Even though I hadn't asked, she proceeded to tell me a lot about her marriage and spouse. According to what I gathered, Allison's husband most likely married her solely to boost his chances of obtaining at least partial custody of his children, which he accomplished. But she believed he loved her or something. He had been in a custody fight for a long time, and as a full-time businessman, he didn't have enough time for his children. His ex-wife was using this against him. Then he claimed that he was engaged and planned to marry as soon as the divorce was finalized, which tipped the scales in his favor. Allison told me all of this while gloating about how she saved those children. To me, it sounded like her husband had cheated her. They hadn't known each other for more than a year when he asked her to marry him, so it was obvious he wasn't in love with her. Nobody falls in love that easily, especially after a divorce. But Allison appeared blissfully unaware, or perhaps she knew he didn't love her but was ready to overlook it due to his large money balance. She seemed content being a glorified nanny to her husband's children. On top of that, she was upset with our parents for wanting her at their side after they had been in a tragic tragedy. She somehow believed that being there for them was detracting from her time with her new family, which comprised a husband who most likely did not love her and 2 children who were not biologically connected to her. These children appeared to be doing well with their nanny, just as they were with her. If ungrateful had a face, Allison would be it. I am not a fan of my parents, but when she mentioned how needy they were, I couldn't believe this was the lady they had repeatedly chosen over me. She eventually got to the point of her visit and informed me that she was departing in 2 days. She had promised Mom and Dad that she would remain for at least a month, but now she stated she was tired of hearing them talk about the tragedy and how it was the worst experience of their lives, for the 10th time. She stated she needed to return home soon. What is her solution? She asked me to reconcile with our parents and take her place. She did not want to feel terrible about leaving them when they needed her. She had no idea they had cut me off again because I refused to help with their bills, most likely because they don't talk about or think about me, so they didn't tell Allison. She came here for sympathy. She wanted me to feel sorry for her for having to deal with our parents and abandoning her family. She intended to use her pity to persuade me to step into her shoes and provide emotional support for our parents because she did not feel up to the role. It was typical Allison manipulation, but I'd known her techniques for too long to fall for them. I had no intention of telling her how I truly felt while she was in my home because it would undoubtedly lead to a fight. So I promised her I'd try, but I know I won't. She went after telling me to keep in touch, which we both knew she didn't mean. Honestly, I was relieved to see her leave. Not only is she a nasty and narcissistic person, but she is also really boring to talk to. I could barely say anything while she went on about her dull existence in California. Her life revolves primarily around parties, stepchildren, and her husband. She believes she is living a dream, but I found it depressing. Her husband clearly does not love her, and her children already spend half of their time with their mother. Of course, they'll grow up to prefer their biological mother over Allison, and they probably already do, based on what I've heard. But it's fine since she chose that life for herself. The life I chose for myself will be far away from my family, who are undeserving of even a quarter of my care or pity. If anything, today taught me that I was correct to distance myself from my parents and sister. I do not want to be a part of these people's lives. They're really selfish and vicious, and I doubt they're capable of thinking about anyone other than themselves, particularly Allison. I'm ashamed to be linked to such folks. At least now, I've been able to permanently cut links with all of them. It is unlikely that they will be able to contact me anytime soon. I blocked Allison as soon as she departed, and I've previously barred my parents and other relatives for a few days. I believe I am secure from being disturbed by my relatives in the near future. I'll pray that they don't try to contact me again after this, because I'm much better off without them. My family didn't invite me to the reunion, so I showed up unannounced, shared my engagement news, and finally took a stand for myself. I am the youngest of 3 siblings and I am 28 years old. As a child, it was clear that I was the odd one out. There was always an obvious favorite, or favorites, I might say, among my parents. With their stable careers, large homes, ideal marriages, and those cute Christmas card families, my brother, 35M, and sister, 32F, were everything parents could boast about. My sister is a lawyer of some sort, and my brother works in finance. Both of them reside in lovely suburban communities with spouses who complement their professional backgrounds. Every family gathering is an opportunity for my parents to brag about their kids to friends and family. And then me. 2 years ago, I left my corporate position to launch a modest business of which I am really proud. I'm content with my life and earn enough money to live comfortably. Together, my 5-year boyfriend and I share a rental home. Even though we're not making a lot of money, we're doing okay. But my folks had a different perspective. Stable and traditional are terms they frequently use, and I suppose I don't suit that description. The subtle jabs about my hobby job, and remarks about how much better my life would be if I had persisted with a 9-to-5 have become unimportant to me. On the surface, we've always been courteous, but the tension has been for years. I didn't believe it was this horrible though. I came across my cousin's tale on Instagram a few weeks ago while perusing the platform. She appeared to be at a large family reunion. With all of the extended family gathered in one house, it was the type of gathering that my family often hosts a few times a year. There were my sister and brother, grinning with their partners. Except for me, my aunt, uncle and cousins were all tagged. I initially believed that I might have missed the group conversation. Perhaps the invitation got lost in all of my alerts. I sent my siblings an SMS. While my sister responds more slowly, she doesn't entirely ignore me, and my brother typically responds right away. Nothing happened for hours. I began to have the strange sensation in my chest that occurs when you know something is amiss but are reluctant to acknowledge it just yet. I called my mother the following day. I asked her how she was doing and if there had been a get-together, using a conversational tone. For far too long, the phone line went silent. She said, "Oh, the reunion? I didn't think you'd want to come. You're always so busy with your little business and everything." I took a moment to answer. I questioned her about why she thought I wouldn't want to attend. After all, my family is my family. She seemed to be trying to shrug the discussion aside as her voice became lighter. "We just didn't want to bother you, sweetheart. Besides, you've missed a few events before." Indeed, but primarily due to work, and not without informing them. As I persisted, it became increasingly evident that my absence was not an accident. They hadn't forgotten me. They had declined my invitation. Something about hearing it firsthand made my stomach plummet, and I'm not sure why. I hung up and sat there listening to the exchange again. I had previously experienced exclusion. Plans for many of the holidays seemed to center around my brother's or sister's families. I used to convince myself that it wasn't deliberate. Perhaps they didn't consider how I would fit into their plans because I didn't have children or a conventional lifestyle. I was unable to ignore it any longer, though, as I sat in my peaceful kitchen and watched my boyfriend work in the other room. This was intentional. My partner was incensed on my behalf when I told him. "You need to go anyway. They don't get to decide you don't belong there," he replied. He was correct. Why should I allow them to act as though I don't exist? I was tired of being treated like an afterthought by my family. Whether they liked it or not, I deserved to be a member of my family. The plan began to take shape at that point. I had been holding on to one card for weeks, and I hadn't played it yet. 2 weeks prior, my boyfriend and I had become engaged. I wanted to do it face to face with the people who should be concerned about my life, but we hadn't notified anyone. Now, though, I had my own motives. I would remind them of my presence if they were considering excluding me from my family. This time, they wouldn't ignore me. I made the decision to arrive without warning. I declined my boyfriend's, bless him, invitation to accompany me. I had to take care of this on my own. We devised a contingency plan, and he agreed to drive up and grab me if things didn't work out. If they didn't want me there, I would arrive and then depart, but not before telling them what I had to say. In order to make it appear as though I had always meant to attend, I prepared a large quantity of snacks to bring with me in the days before. For me, this wasn't about proving myself, even if my partner insisted that I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I had to be there for myself. I had had enough of fading away because they didn't think I belonged. I promised myself that if I had to leave, I would go, smile, and share my news. Although I had no control on their feelings toward me, I did have influence over how I responded to it. I refused to let them treat me like an outsider for once. Additionally, I would at least have closure if things didn't work out. First update. It took slightly over 3 hours to go to my folks' house. The majority of time was spent on how to appear unimpressed, as if I had simply happened to stop by since, well, I was aware of the family reunion. It seemed a bit ironic given why I was there, but the box of handmade cookies on the passenger seat smelled sweet and soothing. After checking the place twice, my partner assured me that he would be prepared to come get me if I needed a way out. I promised to keep him informed. The house was filled with automobiles parked on the lawn and along the driveway when I eventually pulled there. I inhaled deeply, picked up the treat box, and made my way to the front door. From within came the sounds of music, laughter, and clinking dishes. I stepped through the slightly open door. The noise stopped as soon as I entered. I knew they had all seen me without having to glance up. I sensed dozens of eyes swinging toward me as conversations broke off in the middle of sentences. My mother recovered first. She hurried over, her voice too happy and high. "Oh, you succeeded? How unexpected?" She merely patted my arm and moved away without giving me an embrace. Her eyes did not meet the phony warmth in her voice. There was an uneasy shuffle of movement in the room. People resumed their talks, but things had changed. Before my brother vanished into the kitchen, I saw him and my sister looking at each other across the room. Standing with her husband, my sister gave me a quick look before launching back into a boisterous discussion with other aunts. Across the room, I saw my cousin, the same person whose Instagram tale had given me the hint. Despite her apparent astonishment at seeing me, she nodded and smiled slightly. On the dining table, I set my package of goodies next to a spread of what appeared to be catered cuisine. Nobody even looked at my belongings. It hurt when I heard an aunt whispering to someone by the hallway, "Did they not invite her on purpose?" While I was moving through the room, I slipped by them into the living room after pausing to check my phone. My cousin drew me aside a few minutes later. She lowered her voice and looked over her shoulder. "They didn't think you'd come. Your parents, well, they didn't think you'd fit in here anymore." In spite of her apparent remorse, she said, "Fit in," as if I were a shattered puzzle piece in a family portrait. My dad was by the drink station when I left, but I can't recall what I muttered in response. I made the decision to give it a try. I questioned him why no one had told me about the reunion. As he filled the glass, he hardly raised his head to say, "We thought you'd be happier doing your own thing." The words hung thick in the air, yet it wasn't unkind. Since it was clear that I would not receive answers, I didn't press him any further. I didn't feel like making small chat with relatives who were acting as though they didn't see me, and the box of cookies I had brought was still unopened on the table. But it wasn't all bad. A few of my younger cousins approached to greet me. I felt a little better when they inquired about my company and mentioned that they had seen some of my work online. Someone cared about my life, at least. Once more, there was a bustle of talk in the room, and I sat down close to the corner and browsed through my phone idly. I simply needed time to think on what to do next. I didn't want to cause a scene. My sister's voice broke through the commotion at that point. Her face was beaming with joy as she clapped her hands. The room fell silent as she said, "Everyone, I have some news to share." And everyone's eyes shifted to her as she revealed she was expecting her second child. Cheers broke out. As everyone applauded, a few uncles made a joke about placing wagers on whether it would be a girl or a boy. My mother appeared as though she could burst with joy. Nobody gave me a sidelong glance. As I stood there, I heard the laughter and congrats. I seemed to have vanished once more. As usual, the same motif. The fact that I was present was irrelevant. The fact that I had arrived even though I hadn't been invited didn't matter. They would always treat me like an outsider and glorify my siblings. Something broke inside of me. I'm not sure if it was my dad's departure, the rumors I had heard, or the fact that my cookies were still unopened. Perhaps it was everything. I took a glass off the drink table and gave it a loud fork clink. Heads turned to face me as the room gradually became quiet once more. After enjoying the attention, my sister became irritated. I choose to disregard it. "Well," I continued steadily, "I have something to say too, since we're sharing big news." Second update. As soon as I walked in, the place was silent once more. All eyes were on me, all conversations halted, and forks froze in mid-air. But compared to when my sister revealed her pregnancy, the attention wasn't as enthusiastic or welcoming. I felt as though I had disturbed a sacred item. Despite my racing heart, I stood up and held my hand firm. "I just wanted to share some news of my own," I said. I raised my left hand to reveal the engagement ring, which sparkled in the light from the dining room. No one responded for a second when I said, "I got engaged 2 weeks ago." The silence was then broken by a few dispersed claps. From the side of the room, my little cousins, God bless them, cheered me on. The rest of the room remained motionless, as though they were still processing it, but a courteous uncle gave a nod of assent. Before forcing a faint smile, the kind she typically saved for strangers, my mom's face fell. "Why didn't you inform us earlier?" Her voice sounded more like an accusation than one of enthusiasm or inquiry. Her gaze flicked to the ring and then returned to me. I didn't think twice. I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I wasn't sure you'd care. I wasn't invited here, after all. I assumed you no longer wanted me to be involved in family matters. Discomfort spread throughout the room. Pretending to check their phones, people looked at each other or moved in their seats. After standing by the kitchen doorway, my brother moved forward and pushed off the frame. His voice was sharp, and his face was crimson. You are not the focus of this. You have to put yourself first at all times. There was a response to that. A few whispered to themselves, not now. Yet I could sense that everyone was observing. My brother's crossed arms and intense gaze made it difficult for me to speak. So I did. Really, I shot back, you all seem fine without me, but I don't remember getting an invitation to this little party. My engagement is as significant as the news of anybody else. The room became silent once more at that point. My sister refused to look at me since she was still blushing from her own news. My mother's courteous facade was beginning to crumble, and her face changed to one that was more recognizable. Annoyance. I saw her take a breath, likely to speak, but before she could, a voice broke the silence. One of my relatives remarked, she has every reason to be angry. Her arms were folded as she sat close to the couch's edge. What did you expect if you didn't invite her? That she would simply remain silent indefinitely? Some people turned to look at my cousin. From the dining table came another voice. Yes, it's not as though she's incorrect. I sensed a change for a split second. Although it wasn't much, it was sufficient. The fissures were visible. My mom shifted the topic, as she always does when she's cornered, likely understanding she was losing control of the situation. Well, let's not forget how exciting it is that your sister is having another baby, she remarked, bringing a smile back to her voice. The family is thrilled to hear that. There was a deflection, so clear. She was unable to give me this moment, not even for a brief moment. Immediately, the focus returned to my sister, who grinned broadly and thanked everyone once more for their congrats. My brother gave me a cocky grin like he was saying, see? I was done. I took my phone out of my pocket and texted my lover, come get me, without uttering a word. I wasn't going to stay any longer than absolutely necessary. I picked up my handbag and made my way to the front entrance. Two of my younger relatives hurried after me, apologizing and inquiring as to where I was going. One of them hugged me and whispered, you don't deserve this? I returned the hug and assured her that I would be all right. It wasn't loud, but it was loud enough to hear my dad murmur, drama queen, from the side of the room as I was putting on my coat. I hesitated for a moment, but I didn't look back. Rather, I opened the door and went outdoors. The cool air cleared the heaviness in my chest and struck me like a jolt. One of my relatives came running out after me before I had gone halfway down the driveway. Her shoes crunched on the gravel as she jogged to catch up. Hold on, she yelled. I paused and looked at her. She appeared embarrassed, almost as if she was at a loss for words. I apologize, she blurted. For everything. It was courageous. In there you defended yourself. That was not how you should have been treated. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. I managed to say, thanks. Perhaps someone from inside asked what I was doing when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She rushed back toward the house after giving me one final pitying glance. After a few minutes, my boyfriend's vehicle arrived. I buckled my seatbelt, threw my purse on the seat and got in. I started crying as soon as I sensed the car moving. The tears flowed quickly and forcefully, like if I had been suppressing them for hours. My guy simply reached over and squeezed my hand without saying anything. As the trees beyond the window blurred by, I let it all out. The sobbing had subsided into soft sniffles by the time we drove onto the main road. Although I still felt raw and ashamed, there was also relief behind all of that. I hadn't just let it happen for the first time. I had raised my voice. Even if they didn't want to, I forced them to see me. Third update. At first, the only sound on the drive home was the hum of the road. As my fiancé drove, I gazed out the window, mentally reliving every moment of the recent reunion. I eventually opened up, discussing my brother's teasing, my dad's remark about my being a drama queen, my mother's disregard for me, and how my sister's pregnancy announcement had been the last straw. It all spilled out. With his palm resting on the gear shift, my fiancé listened and occasionally nodded. You did the right thing, he added, looking over when I was done. They have no right to declare you unimportant. We will proceed without requiring their consent. It was helpful to hear, yet I remained silent. My phone buzzed as we got close to home. I looked down. The cousin who had followed me out of the gathering had left me a message. You were correct. For a long time, your parents have been discussing you behind your back. I straightened my posture. There was more to the message. I apologize, but you must understand this. Your mother told everyone that your lack of a steady career makes you a disappointment. Additionally, she stated that your sister's announcement is far more significant than your engagement. It didn't seem fair to me. In an attempt to comprehend the words, I read them twice. I was still looking at the screen when I received a second message, this one containing screenshots. It came from a family catch-ups group chat, of which I had obviously been excluded. My mother's name was prominently displayed in one of the screenshots. I'm not sure why she would want to attend anyhow. She constantly makes things about herself and does her own thing. Giving up a real career to pretend to be a business owner? So self-centered. If nothing else, sister is leading a life of which we may be proud. My chest constricted. The subsequent screen grab was even worse. Since I didn't want her to show up and ruin the day with a dramatic story about her engagement, I honestly didn't notify her about the reunion. Who cares? She's not getting married first, after all. When the television came back to life, I sensed my fiancé looking at me. What is it? He inquired. Proof, I muttered. I was still gazing at the screenshots when we arrived home. I entered my family group chat, which I had been kicked out of years ago and was only periodically added back in for important updates, and added myself back in. I wasn't sure if this was because I was angry, wounded, or incredulous. I sent the screenshots as soon as I noticed my name appeared in the chat. Just those receipts for everyone to see, nothing else. I typed, "Is this how you truly feel about me?" a few seconds later. I suppose I ought to have remained forgotten at that time. Setting my phone aside, I waited. It was not long before the responses began to pour in. First to enter, my brother said, "This was private. You're blowing things out of proportion and being dramatic as usual." My sister then asked, "What did you anticipate would happen if you shared this? For no apparent reason, you're making things worse. Give it up." Their texts appeared like fast fire as I watched them type one after the other. Before my mother's name was ultimately displayed, I gave them a minute to vent. Compared to the others, her message was longer. Those remarks were misconstrued. "I don't like you creating all this needless drama, and you're reading too much into things. You've been overly sensitive all along. Taken out of context?" I scribbled a response as I took up the phone once more. "I'm offended because this is not how any parent should discuss their child. This is your opinion of me, even though I wasn't invited to my own family's reunion?" My dad's name showed up in the chat for the first time, but he only typed a scene tag beneath my message instead of typing anything. I didn't stay to finish reading it. I threw my phone onto the couch and placed it on silent. Sitting beside me, my fiancé drew me in. However, my phone buzzed once again shortly after. One of my aunts sent me a private message saying, "I had no idea that any of this was going on. I sincerely apologize for the treatment you received. You're worthy of better." Another reply arrived a few minutes later, saying, "We're proud of you for standing up for yourself. Nobody should be able to convince you otherwise." Although it wasn't much, it gave me hope that I wasn't going insane. I wondered for a long time if I was exaggerating. As my mother used to say, I might have been overly sensitive. However, I now had evidence, and a few supporters, at the very least. My phone rang just as I was beginning to believe that the worst was past. The name of my sister appeared on the screen. I nearly didn't respond, but I did. She wasted no time at all. She remarked, "You're destroying the family dynamic. What prevented you from letting it go? Mom didn't want any conflict, therefore she didn't invite you. You have merely exacerbated the situation." I refrained from arguing. I didn't shout. "You don't let go of not being invited to your own family's reunion," I simply retorted. Then she hung up the phone. I decided I'd had enough that evening as I sat with my fiancé. I wasn't going to ask for their blessing all the time. A family who obviously didn't want me around was not someone I was going to pursue. I have to back down for my own mental health. The group chat was erased by me. My sister's number was blocked by me. And I allowed myself to give up for the first time in years. If love wasn't offered freely, I wouldn't beg for it. Update 4. My phone called out of the blue a week after the repercussions from the family group chat. I froze after taking a quick look at the screen. It was my father. For background, I didn't get many calls from my dad. Never. I was astonished to see his name appear because he mainly left family affairs to my mom. I considered leaving it on voicemail, but my curiosity won out. I took it up. He initially only made the customary awkward small talk. After a lengthy silence, he finally stated that he wanted to clarify the reunion. He spoke in a rigid, nearly practiced voice. He maintained it wasn't intended to harm me and referred to it as a miscommunication. I hadn't heard anything like an apology from him in a long time. I didn't give him a pass. I inquired as to why I hadn't been invited earlier. After struggling to find the right words, he finally said, "It wasn't intentional." I told him that didn't make sense, since how can it be an accident to forget to invite your own child? I persisted, reminding him that my mother's own remarks in the group chat demonstrated differently, but he didn't respond. A second too long, the silence lingered, and then he broke. Quietly, he acknowledged, "She believed it would be better that way. Your mother did not wish for any conflict." That's when I heard it. My mother's voice, followed by a slight background rustle. She must have been using the speakerphone to listen in, because she abruptly interrupted the conversation. She answered abruptly, "I'm here too." As though I had called her somehow. The waterworks then began. She accused me of attacking her and making the family feel ashamed by publishing the screenshots, but her voice faltered. She claimed that I, not she, was the source of the issues. She claimed that I had made everything public only to cause her embarrassment and trouble. I didn't shout or argue. I spoke steadily and assured her that I was only seeking the truth and wasn't making any personal attacks. After hearing what was going on, my fiancé, who had been sitting close by, approached. It was enough to ground me when he placed a hand on my shoulder and muttered, "Don't let them twist this." My mother's tone altered when she saw that I wasn't going to back down. After giving a loud sniff, she continued, "You only announced your engagement at the reunion to steal your sister's spotlight," which almost made me laugh aloud. I didn't think twice. Calmly, I informed her that, like my sister, I had every right to share good news about my life. No one was in competition with me. I informed her that none of this would have occurred if I had been invited in the first place. I could tell I had touched a nerve by the quiet that ensued. She chose to play the victim, which is her favorite approach, rather than admit anything. "It might be better if you don't attend family gatherings at all if you can't forgive us and move on," she remarked forcefully. And there it was, the final command. I remained calm. I refrained from crying. I simply exhaled and answered, "If that's how you feel, then fine," before hanging up. I sat there looking at the phone in my hand for a minute. My fiancé took a seat beside me and waited silently. I told him everything that had transpired, including my mom's accusation and ultimatum, as well as my dad's hesitant apology. "They're showing you exactly who they are," he continued, nodding. I lay in bed that night and gazed up at the ceiling. I kept replaying the phone call in my head. More than that, though, I began to reflect on all the events that had preceded this. I reflected on the holidays I had spent by myself since my siblings' families came first. My parents' constant comparisons of my unstable career to my brother's corner office and sister's work at the law company. The understated appearance. The contemptuous remarks. This was where it had all been leading. As I laid there, I came to the realization that I didn't deserve this. I wasn't worthy of fighting for meager affection or acting as though nothing was wrong. My siblings would always come first, as my family had often demonstrated to me. For the first time, I made the decision to stop pursuing those who made me feel inadequate. My fiancé sat down across from me and handed me a cup of coffee the following morning. He had a solemn expression. He remarked, "I've been thinking. How about hosting our own engagement celebration? Something modest, just those who genuinely stand by us." The concept sounded odd at first. I hadn't even considered celebrating without my family because they had been my default for so long. However, it made more sense the more I about it. Why should I continue to expend my energy on indifferent people? People that loved us for who we were, not who they wanted us to be, were the ones I wanted to celebrate this milestone with. After the reunion, we had a list of friends, my fiancé's family, and a couple of cousins who had gotten in touch with me privately. They all agreed that I was deserving of better treatment. I made the decision to focus on the folks who came to me unconditionally and let go of the things I couldn't control. I kept the celebration a secret from my parents and siblings. I was tired of trying to mend something that had been damaged for years and realized that it would only lead to more turmoil at this point. I was not going to plead for their affection or acceptance for the first time in my life. I had given up trying to find a family that didn't recognize me. At last, I was making my own decision. Fifth update, everything I didn't know I needed was provided at the engagement party. Just my fiancé's family, a few of my relatives who had been there for me through all the turmoil, and close friends made it modest and private. We arranged our backyard with string lights, served a variety of takeout and homemade cuisine, and adorned the tables with flowers that my fiancé had purchased from a nearby market. EasyJet ideal. Early in the evening, people began to arrive. I hadn't experienced such genuine enthusiasm at a family gathering in years, But the atmosphere was lighthearted and full of laughs. As soon as she got there, the cousin who had sent me the screenshots gave me a hug. "You're worthy of better," she said. She didn't mention the reunion, which I appreciated. "We're proud of you." An hour later, the biggest surprise arrived. Another car drew up to the curb, and my fiancé gave me a little shove. One of my aunts was leaving when I turned around. This aunt wasn't just any aunt though, she was the only one to privately text me to apologize and say she didn't know what had been going on following the group chat controversy. She was unexpected, but there she was, smiling warmly and holding a modest wrapped gift. As she entered the yard, she added, "I hope it's okay that I came?" She gave me a hug, and for a second I was speechless. "I wanted to see you both and say congratulations in person." I simply nodded and opened the door for her. It meant more to me than words could express to have her there. The folks who came through for me without reservation were more important than the statistics. Throughout the evening, my fiancé made a toast. The audience became silent as he lifted his glass. "To my future wife," he remarked with a smile, "I've seen her overcome so many obstacles and still come out stronger. Her character and the life we are creating together make me really proud." As the audience applauded, someone exclaimed, "To the happy couple." People who truly wanted to join us in celebrating were all around me as I stood there with my glass. I felt like I was being seen for the first time. There was only love, no backstabbing remarks, no comparisons, and no compulsion to prove anything. We stayed around the fire pit with a few pals and ended up wrapping things late. I was not mistaken when one of my relatives remarked, laughing, "I haven't seen you this happy in years." After 2 weeks, I received an unexpected email. My dad gave it to me. Before I opened my email, I sat there looking at his name. He apologized first. It felt different this time. He acknowledged that, both during the reunion and in other instances prior to it, he had not defended me. He expressed guilt for not doing more to help me feel included and claimed he had no idea how much I had been harmed over the years. "I know I haven't spoken anything when you needed me to," he wrote. "Even though it might take some time, I hope we can begin repairing our friendship." I scrolled down after reading it twice. His addition at the bottom, "Your mom still doesn't see things the same way," caused me to pause. I'm not sure whether she will ever own up to her faults because she feels like the true victim in all of this. I also apologize for that. Although it hurt, it wasn't shocking. My mother had never taken responsibility for anything. I took some time to consider my response, and then I typed up a brief one. I praised my dad for getting in touch and let him know that while I valued his words, I value his deeds more. It would require work on all sides if he really wanted to rebuild things. I honestly didn't require a response, so I didn't anticipate one right away. I wasn't waiting for him to suddenly turn into the ideal father. His little step was plenty for now. However, I wouldn't accept compromises. I refused to put myself back in a situation where I didn't feel appreciated. Naturally, my sister couldn't help but stir things up. A few days later, I came upon one of her passive-aggressive Facebook posts. It was ambiguous but clear enough. It's funny how some people enjoy revealing personal details to get attention. Good or bad, family is family. I didn't answer. I didn't even give myself enough time to become upset about it. After blocking her, I simply went on. Her opinions, her sarcasm, and her judgment no longer had any influence over me. Life was fuller but quieter in the weeks that followed. I concentrated on running my company, organizing our wedding, and hanging out with the individuals who genuinely cared about me. I at last discovered serenity when I let go of the need to win my family's approval. In retrospect, I saw how much of my life had been wasted attempting to conform to a model that I was never meant to fit. Because I was different, my family had always made me feel inferior. However, that didn't prove me incorrect. Their incapacity to recognize my value was a reflection of them, not of me. Family is everything, as some people may say, and perhaps it is true for them. However, rather than condemnation and exclusion, family should be about love, respect, and support. I've never been happier as I'm finally creating a life with individuals that support me unconditionally. So here I am, going forth guilt-free and regret-free. I have no idea what the future holds for my parents or siblings, but I do know that I will never longer accept anything less than what I am worthy of. And to be honest, it feels really nice. Caught husband with my friend, filmed it, and told her husband. Now they're jobless, living off my daughter, who defended him. I contacted her husband after filming my husband and my pal together on our kitchen counter. They currently live with my daughter, who stood up for him, and are unemployed. Without a doubt, the most heartbreaking year of my life was last year. By chance, I found out that Liam, my ex-husband, was having an affair with Abby, my best friend. It was meant to go longer, but I was away for a few days on a work trip. Fortunately, the job was completed ahead of schedule, so I ended up returning home without warning. I didn't bother telling Liam in advance since I wanted to surprise him. I was perplexed when I arrived home and noticed Abby's car in the driveway. I had known Abby since college, and I had grown close to her husband Liam over the years. But Abby never dropped in without first informing me. There were no messages from her or Liam on my phone when I checked it. I heard sounds coming from the kitchen as soon as I walked inside the house. Curious, I moved in the direction of the sound. At that moment, I witnessed Liam and Abby sharing a kiss and engaging in an unimaginable act on the kitchen counter. They didn't even notice me standing there since they were so focused on each other. I stood silently, stunned and unable to comprehend the betrayal. It was heartbreaking to see them in the kitchen, where Liam and I had spent countless family meals and made many memories. I was so shocked that the bag I was clutching fell from my grasp. My best friend was being lovingly touched as if she were his wife by my husband, who had ceased having physical relations with me for the last 3 months and who had called me derogatorily terms like fat pig and hippo, despite the fact that I wasn't overweight. Liam had been forcing me to go to the gym and continually criticizing my body for months, which made me feel insecure. He held me responsible for his loss of interest in me. I had been feeling quite bad about myself and believed that I was unworthy of him. However, I suddenly understood that it was about him and his treachery, not about me. I was broken. The knowledge that the man I loved and the buddy I trusted had plotted to destroy my heart in the most heinous manner was more devastating than the infidelity alone. All of the pain from the previous few months suddenly surfaced. I snatched up my phone without thinking and began recording them. Even though my hands were shaking, I knew I needed evidence. They were still intertwined when I rushed into the kitchen, fueled by wrath. I picked up a skillet I saw on the counter and flung it at Liam to grab their attention. They both jerked in surprise when the pan thudded loudly on him. The expressions on their faces were invaluable as their heads whirled around. When they noticed me standing there, capturing their embarrassment with my phone, their eyes widened in panic. In an attempt to conceal from the camera, Abby frantically covered herself. I approached her and gave her a forceful slap across the face since I was appalled by what she had done. Abby just stood there in shock and embarrassment as the smack reverberated throughout the kitchen. I turned and pushed Liam aside when he attempted to step in. I didn't give a damn. I held my phone in my hand the entire time, documenting everything since it seemed to be the only thing keeping me rooted to the present. I wasn't done yet. I wanted them both to experience the same anguish that I was. I immediately video called Abby's husband Kyle, after stopping the recording. I knew that was the correct thing to do, even if my heart was pounding. He didn't know what was going on when he answered the phone. I flipped the phone so he could see his half-naked wife fumbling in embarrassment as she desperately searched for her clothes. I calmly explained to Kyle what had happened, that I had returned home early from my trip and had seen my husband and his wife together in our kitchen. Kyle was taken aback. His expression of surprise and incredulity reflected how I felt only minutes earlier. Like me when I initially went in, he was speechless and in full shock. Liam screamed at me that I was going too far by making them look bad while attempting to cover his face in embarrassment. I informed Kyle that, like me, he deserved to know the truth. This kind of betrayal shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. I returned my focus to Abby after that. Tears were running down her cheeks as she continued to apologize, pleading with me to listen. Before I hurt her any further, I interrupted her and urged her to leave my house right now. I had just discovered a betrayal that neither Liam nor she could ever make up for with an apology. I saw Liam stand there, dejected and helpless, as Abby raced out, humiliated and ashamed. I may come across as irritable, but I've put forth a lot of effort throughout my life to establish a prosperous job. To survive, I've never really needed anyone. If my spouse had merely requested a divorce, I could have agreed to it. However, it was unacceptable that he would choose to cheat with my best friend in my own home, which I had paid for. Liam made an effort to express regret and pledged to be a better husband. I began packing his belongings, ignoring him. Regardless of what he said, I told him that we were done and that I was going to file for divorce. He began to rage at me after hearing this, saying that divorce was too harsh and insensitive for what he called a foolish mistake. I threatened to call the police and have him taken from the house in front of all of our neighbors when he attempted to seize my hands to stop me from packing his belongings. I also knew that he would never have confessed or quit cheating if I hadn't discovered him because I knew how much he treasured his reputation. Liam was not even employed at the time. After he was found to have violated business policies, he was fired. I don't want to go into the specifics, but it was so bad that he was dismissed right away after a coworker reported him. I provided for us financially as the main provider while he became a stay-at-home dad. I made 3 times as much as he did, Therefore I didn't mind paying for everything on my own, so it wasn't a financial burden. But at the time, I was unaware of how he was spending all that additional time. I guess it makes sense in retrospect. I had known for some time that Abby and Kyle's marriage had been struggling. Abby's problems in her own relationship and Liam's constant presence at home likely gave them ample opportunity to connect on a deeper level. It's difficult to express the anger I feel when I realize that Liam was betraying me in my home and under our roof, with someone I trusted totally, while I was out working hard to maintain our family. Liam, meantime, persisted in arguing with me, claiming that since we had been married for so long, divorce was out of the question and that we need to instead attend couples counseling. He had the audacity to pretend to be the victim, as though I were at fault for even bringing up the idea of our splitting up. Disbelief and rage blazed in my breast as I gazed at him. I questioned him directly about whether he had given the repercussions any thought before choosing to have sex with my closest friend. Did he ever consider what might occur? Did he think that I would simply forgive him, go on, and continue living with him? He blurted out that I shouldn't throw away our marriage for one error because Liam had always been faithful to me throughout the years, his face turning beet red and obviously embarrassed. Then, as though it were less of a betrayal, he attempted to minimize it by claiming that it was just the 4th time he and Abby had shared a bed. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Then he had the gall to accuse Abby of being the cause of the entire situation, saying that she had tempted him because her own marriage to Kyle was failing. The degree of cowardice and denial was unbelievable. The sight of him was so unbearable to me. The man I had once referred to as my husband was obviously no longer someone I could continue to be married to. Following much back and forth, I was able to evict Liam from the residence. Not surprised, Liam turned to our adult daughter Mary for assistance because he had nowhere else to turn. Mary and her father are closer, as I've always known. For as long as I can remember, she has been a daddy's girl, and I've never had any problems with that. Even if they were occasionally closer than she and I were, I cherished the fact that she and him shared such a deep friendship. Mary's voice was confused and worried when she called me. She inquired about the situation and informed me that Liam had phoned her for assistance after I had evicted him due to a silly fight, and that he was now homeless. I sent her the video I had taken of Liam and Abby together and told her the truth. She needed to know exactly why things had come to this point, and I didn't want her to have any doubts about what her father had done. When Mary saw the evidence, she was naturally incensed at her father. She told me she understood why I expelled her father and that she couldn't believe he could have done anything so heinous. But in spite of her rage, she acknowledged that she still hoped I would change my mind, that perhaps, eventually, I would be able to take everything in and figure out a solution. She told me that she would look after Liam for the foreseeable future. I recognized that even though she was deeply offended by his behavior, she was unable to fully turn her back on him. Mary and Liam began calling me alternately in the days that followed, each pleading with me to pardon him for the benefit of the family. Particularly coming from Liam, who was obviously exploiting Mary's love for him to influence her in his favor, it felt like the worst kind of emotional manipulation. I became even more irate when I realized I could see right through it. He tried to use our daughter's affection for him to obtain what he wanted, and I was mad at him for bringing her into this mess. At the same time, Mary's position left me feeling extremely upset and perplexed. I didn't understand why she appeared more concerned with helping her dad than with me during such a trying moment. It hurt more than words can express since it seemed like she didn't see how much I was suffering. I decided to proceed with the divorce in spite of their efforts. I filed for divorce from Liam because I knew it was the correct thing to do and because I wasn't going to be coerced or guilt-tripped into remaining in such a terrible marriage. Abby's spouse, Kyle, was going through the divorce filing procedure at the same time. He was equally saddened as I was, and we grew close as a result of our shared suffering. Having him to talk to made the whole situation a little more tolerable because he was one of the few individuals who actually understood what I was going through. However, to be clear, we have always stayed friends and nothing romantic has ever happened or will ever happen between us. Liam began pleading with me for forgiveness when I eventually delivered the divorce papers to Mary's residence. He made a lot of promises, saying that he would never again look at another woman and that he was prepared to permanently remove Abby from our life. Seeing him attempt to tidy up the mess he had made only after realizing I was serious about leaving was, to be honest, pitiful. Mary, who was present when I served him the papers, asked me to change my mind for her benefit. She told me that she had witnessed firsthand how much her father loved me when she was growing up and that he didn't necessarily love that woman simply because he had accidentally slept with someone else. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I wasn't going to be influenced by her sincere attempts to defend her father and minimize the gravity of his actions. When it became clear that her father had deceived me, not just in any way, but with my best friend and in our own house, I informed her that I had nothing else to think about. After that, there was no turning back. Debating whether or not to give him another chance was a waste of time for me. I was resolved to leave him because he had ruined our marriage. In an attempt to fight with me, Mary asked if I would truly be content without him. I assured her that I would be quite content now that I wouldn't have to worry about my husband having an affair while I was working and earning money. I had not made my decision hastily. There was no amount of explaining or begging that could change my mind. It was amazed how easy the divorce procedure was. Liam was unable to access any of my assets since I had insisted on a prenuptial agreement early in our marriage. I made sure everything went well by hiring the greatest attorney in town, who was well versed in handling situations similar to mine. From the beginning, it was obvious that I would win the case. It felt like a huge burden had been lifted off my shoulders when the divorce was finally finalized. It was almost like I had been released from a jail I was unaware I was in. I had been so utterly enamored with Liam for so long that I failed to understand how much better my life could be without him. His poisonous presence seemed to have been suffocating me and pulling me down like a dead weight. I could now, however, live my life as I saw fit, free from the specter of betrayal and ongoing hurt. People in our network began contacting me more frequently as word got out about what had transpired between Liam and Abby. I started to receive support from friends, relatives, and even acquaintances who wanted to let me know they were there for me. Even Liam's own family made it quite evident that my decision to divorce him was the right one. They were indignant with him and utterly repulsed by his actions. I felt somewhat validated by their support. It was comforting to know that I wasn't the only one who felt this way, that others supported me despite Liam's behavior. But our daughter Mary was the only one who stuck by Liam's side. She still felt sorry for him in spite of everything. Perhaps it was her method of handling the whole event, or perhaps it was the enduring relationship she shared with her father. I made the decision to throw a lavish birthday party this year. After years of marriage to Liam, it was my first birthday without Liam, and I wanted to celebrate my newfound independence. Together with a caterer and a guest list of 50 to 60, my pals and I organized a massive party. I wanted the evening to be unforgettable. Since Kyle had finally divorced Abby after months and months of court proceedings, it goes without saying that he was also invited. Through it all, we had developed a close friendship. Though I made it obvious that Liam was not welcome, I did send Mary an invitation. I couldn't allow him to ruin my birthday night because he was still living with Mary. Everyone appeared to be enjoying themselves as the celebration got underway. The energy was amazing, people were taking shots, and it seemed like the ideal way to celebrate this new phase of my life. Some of my closest friends offered moving comments when it was time to cut the cake, expressing their pride in me for surviving such a difficult year. They talked about how I had been betrayed and how much happier I appeared to be now. The compassion and kindness they displayed moved me. It felt good to feel appreciated and seen by the ones who cared most after everything that had transpired. Unexpectedly, though, Mary got up and declared that she had some things to say. She appeared a little shaky, and I could tell she had been drinking. However, I didn't initially give it much thought because a lot of the people were intoxicated by this time. I assumed she merely wanted to share some lovely recollections or wish me a happy birthday. But Mary started berating me in front of everyone. She talked about how heartbroken he was and how disappointed she was in me for ruining our years of marriage. She spoke loudly, passionately, and angrily. She continued by describing how, as a child, she had always thought her parents were married and how I had broken the illusion by abandoning Liam without even attempting to resolve our issues. When I made the decision to file for divorce, she accused me of being a selfish mother who just had my own interests in mind. It was heartbreaking to hear her statements in front of all of my friends on a night that was supposed to celebrate my pleasure and independence since they were so profound. People were defending me before I could even comprehend what was happening. My buddies, who had personally witnessed my ordeal, weren't going to accept Mary's claims without question. Kyle also raised his voice, telling Mary that her father had deceived me in the most painful way imaginable, therefore she had no right to be upset with me. He reminded her that rather than placing blame where it wasn't due, she need to show me more empathy and compassion as my daughter and a fellow woman. Mary, who was obviously agitated, attempted to counter, but her words were lost in the crowd's mounting annoyance. Some of the attendees were so horrified by her treatment of me, especially on a night like tonight, that they even began booing her loudly. I felt a surge of emotions at that precise moment. My eyes filled with tears as I gazed at Mary, the daughter I had reared and adored. It was me who supported this family from the beginning. Your father, Liam, moved into my home after we were married, and during my pregnancy, he never really stepped up as a parent. When I went into labor, I was the one who endured hours of agony to bring you into the world. When it came to raising you, I was the one who stayed at home, took care of you, and made sure you had everything you needed. Even after I went back to work, I was the one who hired a nanny to assist with your care. Mary, I said in a shaken but firm voice. I worked long hours as the main provider to give you the nice life you eventually came to love. The house over our heads, the food on our table, and all the comforts you and your father enjoyed were all made possible by my income. I went on to explain how I had used my connections to help Mary land an internship and subsequently a position when she had begun looking for work, saying, I did all of that for you while Liam did nothing. He wasn't there to mentor or encourage you in the ways that were important. You seemed to think highly of him despite the fact that he was the entertaining dad who only spent a few hours of his day with you. I've done so much for you and our family, and now I'm the one being held responsible for finally deciding to stand up for myself and end a poisonous marriage. I told her, heartbroken, that she had to go. This was supposed to be my night, a celebration of my strength and resilience, but instead, you've turned it into a scene. Though it hurt, I knew that if Mary couldn't understand why I had to leave Liam, then perhaps the distance between us was what we both needed. Mary threatened to cut off contact with me permanently before she left, but I stood my ground and told her that I was okay with it as long as she was happy with her choice. One of the toughest things I've ever had to do was watch her leave my party, but I knew deep down that this time I had to pick myself, not because I was selfish, but because I was standing up for the life and happiness I deserved, regardless of who attempted to make me feel bad about it. Several of my family members who were at the party have contacted me since this incident, stating that I may have been a little too harsh on my daughter and that I should apologize because they think she is going through a lot and that I embarrassed her by saying all those things in front of everyone when I could have spoken to her privately. First update. It feels good to know I didn't do anything wrong. As a mother, I sometimes feel overwhelmed with guilt. I know I made the right choice, but I still have that nagging mom guilt and occasionally question whether I should have done more to make things work with Liam, just for Mary's sake. Wow, I didn't expect to receive so many direct messages and comments from strangers here, all offering their unwavering support. I'm not sure why Mary is so obsessed with our marriage. She's an only child and didn't likely think her parents would divorce like many of her friends' parents did. To be honest, I didn't think I would end up divorcing my ex either, but Liam's behavior left me with no other option. I couldn't stay in that situation. Second update. A month and a half has passed since my last update, and for those who have been wondering about Liam and Abby, I finally have some exciting news. As I previously mentioned, Abby and Kyle got divorced shortly before my birthday party, and the reason their divorce process took so long, in contrast to mine, was that they share 3 children and never had a prenuptial agreement. What worked for Kyle was that he had solid evidence that Abby had cheated, so she couldn't get alimony, but she and her lawyer fought hard and won child support because of their 3 children, and since Kyle makes a lot of money, the money will be more than enough to support her, and she won't even need to work, and she can likely make ends meet with a part-time job if needed. After deciding to cut off all communication with me after the party, my daughter Mary reached out to me in tears yesterday. It turns out that Liam surprised her a few days after my party by telling her that Abby and her 3 children would be staying with them for the next few weeks. Mary was taken aback because Liam had made this decision without consulting her, and since this was her place, she had to shoulder all of their costs because both Liam and Abby are unemployed. Mary, who works from home, lost all her privacy when Abby and her children moved in, and Liam encouraged her to embrace his new family and talk about how they could all start over together. Liam and Abby would frequently leave their children with Mary to babysit without asking and go out for hours to spend time together in a romantic manner. I was incensed that after weeks of silence and the humiliation she caused me at my birthday party, Mary had the audacity to call me for help in getting rid of Liam and Abby because she was at her wit's end and needed me to talk to them and force them to move out because she was too scared to confront her dad herself. I told her bluntly that she should have thought about the consequences of siding with her cheating dad over me and that she deserved this for doing so. I also made it clear that she should never again contact me. She has been phoning and texting me nonstop since, accusing me of being a poor mother for not supporting her and claiming that it is my responsibility as a parent to defend her. Third update. Although I don't know why she is so blinded by her father, I do agree with the general consensus that my daughter lacks courage when it comes to him, and I have no intention of helping her in any way. It's clear that Liam and Abby are using her as a free babysitter and will keep doing so until she defends herself and ejects them. Given how vehemently Mary had defended Liam at my birthday party, it's really upsetting that he let Abby move in with them. I definitely made the correct decision in divorcing Liam. He would have carried on with his affair with Abby if I hadn't gone. As some of you suggested, I finally sent my daughter an email, and here is what I wrote. Subject. Time to make a decision to marry. It's your home, and you shouldn't have to put up with Dad and Abby acting like they own it. You need to take charge and tell them they can't stay there. I'm still angry about the way you treated me, but that doesn't change the fact that you need to defend yourself right now. You need to set clear boundaries and be firm. I hope you find the strength to stand up for yourself, because if you don't, they will keep using you as a cash cow forever. Your dad is not your responsibility. I'll be here if you ever understand how wrong your ways are and want to apologize, but until then, be careful. As it turned out, Kyle had just learned that Abby and Liam had been living together, something Abby had been hiding from him. I also contacted Kyle to let him know about Abby's current living situation and how she has been neglecting the children by making my daughter Mary look after them. She had purposefully refused to allow Kyle to pick up the children from Mary's house ever since she moved in with Liam, insisting that they meet at neutral places, and she had even forced the children to lie to him about their living arrangement. Kyle was shocked and skeptical when he finally found out from mutual friends because he had no evidence, but after I verified the facts, he is now resolved to fight for custody of his children in order to take them away from Abby's custody permanently, and if he is successful, Abby will no longer receive the child support she has been depending on. Without that support, Abby and Liam's financial condition would worsen due to their unemployment. They may encounter major obstacles and, should Mary decide to expel them, they may also find themselves homeless. I only hope my daughter makes the right decision at last. My parents publicly humiliated me at my golden sister's party. I cut ties, rebuilt myself, and exposed the truth about their toxic legacy. My sister, Maya, 47F, has always cast a shadow over me, 42F. We were brought up in a wealthy Boston suburb by parents, both in their late 70s, who were very focused on success and social standing. Even though we were both intellectually gifted, Maya was always presented as our family's jewel while I was only an afterthought. This dynamic was evident from my very first recollections. Our parents would have lavish celebrations for Maya's birthdays, inviting the kids from the wealthiest families in their neighborhood. In contrast, my birthdays were frequently overlooked or commemorated with a hurried card explaining that we already spent too much on Maya's party this year. This trend persisted throughout our schooling. Our parents hosted an all-night celebration when Maya was accepted to a prestigious private high school. They simply remarked, "At least we won't have to pay for this one," when I was awarded a merit scholarship to an equally renowned institution 2 years later. Every accomplishment I made was compared to Maya's and found wanting. The difference was much more noticeable while we were in college. Our parents covered all of Maya's living expenses and tuition at Yale Law School, as well as a nice apartment. Regarding my schooling, they advised me to take out loans or pursue a less costly job route because they had already committed their resources to Maya's law school fund. In spite of this, I obtained scholarships, worked several jobs, and earned an honors degree in computer science. When we started our careers, Maya took the route our parents had carefully mapped out for her, joining a prominent legal practice and moving up the corporate ladder as predicted. In the computer sector, I forged my own route by relying more on talent and perseverance than on family ties to launch my career. Family get-togethers were usually fraught with tension. Maya was referred to as our successful daughter by our parents, who would treat me as though I didn't exist. Our mother would hastily shift the topic or make disparaging remarks such, "Oh, she does something with computers," when family members inquired about my line of work. I was able to establish a decent job in spite of the ongoing, subtle, but persistent emotional assault. I managed a team of engineers and had a comfortable six-figure salary as a middle management at a burgeoning software business by the time I was in my early 40s. However, this was nothing compared to Maya's accomplishments as a lawyer in our parents' eyes. It all came to a climax during Maya's promotion party 3 years ago. Our parents kept reminding everyone that she was the youngest person ever to be appointed a senior partner at her firm. More than 200 members of Boston's affluent social circles were invited to the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza, which they had rented out. The intricate floral arrangements, the champagne towers, and the string quartet playing in the corner are just a few of the agonizing details I can still clearly recall from that night. In order to celebrate the accomplishment of their golden kid, our parents had gone all out. I felt like an alien at what should have been a family gathering, so I sat at my designated table, a little away from the main family table, and tried to act dignified. I anticipated the customary kudos for Maya when our father got up to speak, but what transpired was more than I could have ever dreamed. He opened by referring to Maya as their greatest blessing while addressing the full assembly of Boston's social and legal elite. I had long recognized that she was their golden child, so that part wasn't shocking. The room burst in amusement as he went on to joke that they should have stopped having children after Maya since the second ones are usually useless anyway. He said that they could have spent all of their time and money on Maya rather than wasting them on me. My mother said, "At least we had one child we could be proud of," as she stood next to him, grinning and nodding. Their words weren't even the worst part. It was observing the reactions of those in my immediate vicinity, who seemed to find my public humiliation amusing. I frantically glanced at Maya in the hopes that she would speak up or else demonstrate her sisterly support. However, she merely shot me a pitying look before joining in the uncomfortable giggles. "They're just joking," Maya remarked simply when I questioned her later in the hotel's powder room. "Perhaps they would be proud of you too if you put in as much effort as I did." Those remarks, given with such casual harshness, were the last straw. My relationship with my family ended that evening. I had put up with being the inferior daughter for years, but this public admission of my inadequacy was too much. I immediately removed them from all of my social media accounts, blocked their phone numbers, and erased their email addresses as soon as I came home. I got a job at another software business across town in less than a week, and I immediately started a new life. I gave my job and personal development all of my attention for the ensuing 3 years. I developed a solid team, received numerous promotions, and even began coaching more junior female IT workers. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely valued for my abilities, and my new coworkers recognized my leadership style and skill set. My parents were worried about my absence from family events, I was told by distant relatives, but their worry was never followed by an apology. Telling everyone that I was being oversensitive and dramatic, Maya seemed to defend their actions. She even implied that my emotional instability was evidence that our parents had been correct about me all along. Life continued, and my independence brought me serenity. I traveled widely, purchased a stunning brownstone in Back Bay, and formed sincere friendships with individuals who valued me for who I am. I found a sense of self-worth that was unrelated to comparisons to my sister, and the burden of continuously attempting to earn my parents' love subsided. My parents sent me several urgent texts yesterday after I hadn't heard from them in 3 years. The first few arrived via email, followed by voicemails on my work phone and, lastly, text messages from unfamiliar numbers. I felt something bad must have happened because they hadn't made an attempt to get in touch with me in months. I called them back after unblocking their number against my better judgment, my pulse pounding as I braced myself for any news they could have. Must I tell them what they told me? Their predicament is almost poetically ironic, and I'm thinking of a plan of action that might eventually let them see the repercussions of their actions. However, I want to be sure that my judgment isn't influenced by past traumas. I've been thinking about how life can take such unexpected turns while sitting in my home office for the past few hours and gazing out my window at the Boston skyline. For me, the last 3 years have been life-changing. My team now looks up to me instead of me being the constant letdown. I played a key role in helping us land a significant deal that recently made our business famous. In retrospect, I see how much their unrelenting criticism impacted every facet of my existence. I hopped from relationship to relationship in my 20s and 30s, constantly selecting individuals who would treat me the same way my parents did, as though I was never quite good enough. To comprehend the pattern and overcome it, years of therapy were required. Their disdain for my accomplishments even affected my job decisions. Whenever I was successful, I would minimize my achievements, almost as an act of contrition. I didn't even inform them when I got my first big promotion because I knew they would somehow compare it to Maya's career. Ironically, they never realized how strong it was to launch a profession without their help since they were too preoccupied with upholding their flawless image and Maya's flawless reputation. Every accomplishment I made was the result of my own perseverance and diligence. Maya provided financial support and connections, but I was left to fend for myself in the corporate world. I can't help but think about how my parents' fixation with social standing and perfection has finally come back to haunt them as I get ready to disclose what they told me. After all, the cosmos appears to have a sense of humor. I'm also struggling with the fact that, in spite of everything they've done, including years of emotional abuse and humiliation in front of others, a tiny part of me still cares about my family's well-being. Perhaps that makes me human, or perhaps it makes me weak. In any case, I am certain that the choice I make next will permanently alter everyone's life. Shall I share their words with you? What do I intend to do? I am aware that some people could argue that I should be the larger person and take the high road. But perhaps it's time for them to comprehend what it's like to lose everything they hold dear, including their reputation, social status, and ideal family image, after decades of being destroyed and that embarrassing speech 3 years ago. My office is now covered with deep shadows as the sun sets over the Charles River. I'm getting more and more frantic as my phone continues to beep with additional messages from my folks. My silence is probably making them nuts because they have never had to wait for anything in their lives. Excellent, I believe I'm prepared to discuss what they told me and my next steps. To be clear, though, this isn't about retaliation. It's time to hold them accountable for years of emotional abuse. This is about justice. Justice is at stake here, and they must be held responsible for years of emotional torture. Showing them that their useless second daughter is more powerful than they ever thought is the goal here. If you would want to hear the rest of this story, please let me know. It will be worth the wait, I assure you. First update. I spent the next few hours assembling the startling facts of Maya's predicament following that initial phone conversation with my parents. Not only was what they disclosed shocking, but it also completely destroyed the flawless image they had worked so hard to create over the years. My parents claim that Maya has been battling a serious cocaine addiction. 3 months ago, she lost her job at the law firm, but she was able to keep it a secret from our parents by acting as though she was still employed. Only after one of their country club friends noticed Maya in a troubling state outside a well-known drug house in a dilapidated area of Boston did they learn the truth. What is the most ironic aspect of this whole circumstance? It seems that Maya began using cocaine in order to continue performing well at work. In order to keep up with the rigorous schedule and high-pressure atmosphere, she sought chemical aid due to the burden of being the youngest senior partner and our parents' unending expectations. I could hear the shame seeping out of my mother's voice as she tearfully described how Maya had spent all of her money and their retirement fund to fuel her habit. What really surprised me, though, was that their reputation, rather than Maya's health or recuperation, remained their top priority. As if someone would overhear our phone talk, my mother muttered, "We can't let anyone at the club know about this. What would people think? We've already had to justify her absence from recent social gatherings." The portion that made my blood boil then came. As is his custom, my father looked for someone else to blame for his golden child's decline. "Back then, you didn't expose her to drugs, did you?" His voice was full of accusations as he asked. "You were always the one who rebelled." I became silent in shock. They were attempting to blame me for this despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to them or Maya in 3 years. They didn't seem to care that I've never even done drugs. They believe that their useless daughter is somehow to blame for any issues with their ideal daughter. My mother promptly added their true motive for phoning. She begged, "Please come home and help us take care of her. People would find out if we sent her to rehab, so we can't. You might be able to take a few weeks off from work. After all, your work isn't nearly as significant as Maya's former work." It was verified that nothing had changed by that final remark, which was so nonchalantly harsh. They couldn't resist making fun of me, even in this circumstance. However, they later disclosed something that further fanned the ridiculousness of their request. Maya's former coworkers had already made 2 attempts at intervention, including offering to covertly set up private therapy at a covert facility in Switzerland. My dad clarified, "We can't risk anyone finding out. The reputation of our family would be ruined if it were known that Maya had entered a rehab facility. We would like to deal with this internally." With me serving as her full-time caregiver, their plan, if you can call it that, was to keep Maya confined to her old room at their home. Through sheer resolve and familial duty, they appeared to believe that their useless daughter might somehow overcome their perfect one's drug addiction. I'm still in shock over their foolishness. I find it ironic that after years of ignoring and disparaging me, they are now seeking for my assistance. Even more startling, though, is their readiness to jeopardize Maya's health, and maybe her life, in order to protect their reputation. We would like to deal with this internally. They had a plan, if you can call it that, to keep Maya confined to her old room at their house while I took care of her full-time. Through sheer resolve and familial responsibility, they appeared to believe that their useless daughter might somehow heal their perfect one's drug addiction. My mother genuinely sneered at my suggestion that addiction calls for expert medical help. "Stop being dramatic," she advised. "You've never been as strong as Maya. She will recover if her family provides her with some help. She is unique, she is not like other addicts." This was the direction of the conversation for nearly 2 hours. They took turns pointing the finger at me, downplaying how bad Maya's addiction was, and worrying about how to hide it from their friends. They never once showed sincere concern for Maya's welfare or admitted that their pressure may have contributed to her demise. My father made one last remark before hanging up the phone, which solidified my choice of what to do next. "Keep in mind that if you don't assist us with this, you're proving all we've ever said about you being of no use to this family," he continued. Without answering, I hung up, already making plans in my head. They wish to remain silent about this. Their reputation is a concern for them. Perhaps it's time for Boston's elite to meet the family they've long admired in person. I can't help but see the irony as I sit here figuring out what to do next. They need the daughter they cast aside to preserve the one they revere after spending years pulling me down to elevate Maya. However, I have another idea that will ultimately help them see the real consequences of their behavior. Shall I tell you my plan? Taking the high road isn't exactly what most people would think of doing, But perhaps it's not the best course of action this time around given everything they've done. Watch this space to see what happens next. I can assure you that karma will soon make a stunning entrance in their meticulously planned life. Second update. I debated for a long time before deciding to contact Maya directly. Without our parents interfering, I wanted to hear her side of the tale. What transpired was painful and eye-opening. On the phone, Maya's voice was hardly recognizable, weak, uncertain, and entirely different from the self-assured sister I recalled. She initially spoke in short, disjointed words, as though it took a great deal of work to put her ideas together. The entire story then slowly came to light. She didn't fall into addiction all at once. It began soon after I was humiliated by our parents at the promotion party. The weight of our parents' expectations and the burden of being the youngest senior partner became too much to bear. She admitted, I was frantically trying to prove I deserved the position by working 90-hour weeks. I had trouble falling asleep. Every case seemed like it might be the one in which I failed, where I would demonstrate my lack of competence. Seeing how worn out she was, one of the other partners gave her something to keep her advantage. Cocaine was the something in question. What began as a one-time boost to get through challenging instances turned into a daily requirement. Maya explained how she would plan her entire day to keep up the ideal facade while controlling her increasing dependence. She would plan court dates for the mornings when she was most lucid, attend lunch meetings that were really occasions to use, and progressively distance herself from everyone who may observe her decline. The most startling admission, however, came when Maya sobbed and admitted that it was also a turning point in her life to witness our parents make fun of me at her celebration. She wailed. I saw myself becoming them. I was so focused on maintaining this image of perfection that I stood there and let them destroy you. I've carried that guilt ever since. She disclosed how the unrelenting adulation from our parents had turned into a prison. The bar was increased with each success. The pressure to be flawless increased with each achievement. They didn't just ruin your life, she said in a whisper. They ruined mine, too, just in a different way. The topic of discussion turned to her present circumstances. Her savings, her career, and her standing in the legal community are all gone. Our parents' resistance to allow her to get professional help, however, is what scares her the most. She said, they keep saying they can handle it privately. But I know I need real treatment, I'm scared I'll die if I don't get help soon. Then Maya did something that surprised me. She expressed regret, not just a shallow, I'm sorry, but a sincere admission of her responsibility for my suffering. She apologized for all the times she had taken sides with our parents, for all the times she had reveled in their admiration while they had denigrated me. In her own words, you were always the stronger one. You built your life despite them, while I built mine to please them. Look where that got me. Neither of us missed the irony in her comment. Maya shared more details about our parents' present conduct while we spoke. More focused on maintaining appearances than obtaining her assistance, they have been micromanaging her deterioration. They've created elaborate lies to explain my absence from social events, Maya stated. They've even staged fake video calls where I pretend to be working late at the office I no longer have access to. Finding out how they have been responding to her withdrawal attempts was the most upsetting aspect. They have seen it as a minor nuisance rather than seeking medical care. When I experience severe symptoms, they give me sleeping pills and lock me in my old bedroom, she stated. They tell the housekeeping staff I have a bad flu. I overheard them discussing what to tell the country club members, Maya remarked, laughing bitterly. They were more worried about maintaining their standing in the club than whether I might need emergency medical care. I had a clear image of Maya's addiction and the poisonous familial dynamic that fueled it by the end of our talk. Our parents hadn't produced one successful and one unsuccessful daughter. Though in separate ways, they had harmed us both. I want to get proper help, finally, Maya said. But I'm terrified of standing up to them. They've controlled every aspect of my life for so long. I don't know how to defy them. I understood exactly what I had to do at that point. I had to change my original revenge plot. Indeed, our parents should be held accountable for their deeds. However, I also have to make sure Maya receives the much-needed assistance. I'm developing a new plan that will safeguard Maya's road to healing while also exposing our parents' destructive behavior. Now is the moment to demonstrate to them that their useless daughter is capable of handling any problem, even if it means destroying their valuable social standing in the process. I will describe my plan and how I plan to implement it in the upcoming update. Let's assume that our parents are going to realize that keeping up appearances shouldn't be their top priority at this time. Third update. My strategy was executed with precision and method, focusing on our parents' most prized possession, their position in Boston's affluent circles. With the church community, Phase 1 got underway. I secretly forwarded documents to the Senior Leadership Council of their Episcopal Church, including proof of Maya's current state and a thorough letter detailing how our parents were deliberately delaying their daughter from obtaining life-saving medical care. I emphasized how they put appearances before their daughter's life by mentioning their refusal of the offer of the Swiss Rehabilitation Center. It happened just before the annual meeting of the church fundraising committee, which my mother had chaired for the previous 15 years. The council reacted quickly. In addition to removing her from the committee, they started a formal conversation regarding the Christian need to help family members in need. With several members of the church openly glancing at my parents' normal pew, which was noticeably empty, the Sunday sermon about pride coming before a fall was especially incisive. Phase 2 focused on their network of professional contacts. I methodically contacted important associates at Maya's previous legal practice, voicing my serious concerns regarding our parents' handling of the matter. The company immediately disassociated itself, already concerned about possible liabilities. Our parents' painstakingly constructed fiction about Maya continuing to work there was essentially destroyed when they released a formal statement stating that she had left months prior for personal reasons. The country club stage was especially fulfilling. All I had to do was make sure the appropriate individuals heard the appropriate conversations. Among the elite members of the club, gossip spread like wildfire. The absurdity of the situation was now being discussed in whispers by the same social circles that had laughed at my humiliation 3 years prior. My mother's valuable junior league connections provided the brilliant idea. The message was clear. Their place in Boston's social hierarchy was eroding. I made arrangements for their annual charity banquet, which was typically held at our parents' house, to be moved because of concerns about the home environment. I put the second phase of my plan into action as their meticulously planned social environment collapsed. I was able to get Maya a spot at a prestigious rehabilitation center in Arizona, away from Boston's prying eyes, by working with her old coworkers. It gave her the opportunity to heal free from the poisonous influence of our parents. The administrative director of the facility consented to list Maya under a false identity after learning about our parents' meddling in earlier attempts at rehabilitation. This made sure our parents couldn't interfere with or control her therapy. Maya's path to recovery, from addiction and from our parents' oppressive expectations, began when she wrote me a quick note upon arriving at the facility. "Thank you for being strong enough to do what I couldn't." As I had expected, our parents' response to their social collapse was just that. They kept calling me, alternating between angry calls and frantic pleas. Father's last voicemail was quite instructive. "How dare you destroy everything we built? We gave you life, and this is how you repay us." I sent a single text message in response. "Consider this my repayment for your years of apt parenting. Your reputation is experiencing the same thing you did to my self-worth, systematic destruction. How does it feel to be seen as useless in your social circle?" Boston's affluent social circles are still feeling the effects. Our parents, who were once honored guests at all important social gatherings, are now discreetly denied invitations to important events. They get no response to their calls. They mysteriously lose their regular reservations for dinner at upscale eateries. Their new reality is the sidelong glances and whispers they have been trying so hard to escape. Maya's therapist at the rehab facility sent me an unexpected email last week. She revealed, with Maya's consent, that my sister is progressing remarkably. Now that she is finally getting professional assistance and is free from our parents' toxic expectations, she is starting to realize how their fixation on perfection fueled her addiction. In addition, the therapist made a comment that made me cry. It seems that Maya has a picture of us as kids on her bedside table. It was taken before our connection was ruined by our parents' expectations. She hopes to restore the sisterly connection we previously shared by looking at it every morning as inspiration for her recuperation. Unable to handle their embarrassment in Boston, our parents are said to have escaped to their Berkshire's vacation home. Things became worse after their last attempt at damage control, which involved sending a long email to their social circle saying they were misinterpreted. They were officially suspended from the country club after someone, not me, for once, leaked it to all of the members. One of my mother's oldest friends, who saw me humiliated at Maya's promotion celebration, wrote me a letter yesterday. She realized how the community had tolerated our parents' destructive behavior for years and expressed her sincere regret for not speaking out that evening. "Letting someone face the consequences of their actions is sometimes the most loving thing we can do," she wrote at the end of her letter, a quotation that encapsulated the situation well. Some may argue that my retaliation was excessively severe and that I ought to have approached the matter more tactfully. However, I disagree. Our parents' reputation was cultivated over decades of violence and emotional abuse. They maintained control and imposed their perverted ideal of perfection by using their social position as a weapon. They are now going through the agonizing reality of being viewed as a letdown by their peers, just as they did to me. Maya's recuperation is still going well. She's beginning to envision a future free from the controlling influence of our parents, one in which she defines success according to her own standards rather than using their distorted definition. Together, we are gradually mending the harm our parents caused to our relationship. For my part, I've at last discovered tranquility. It turned out that the useless daughter was the one who could bring about both justice and salvation. I've demonstrated that the ability to stand up for what's right, even at great personal expense, is a better indicator of success than social standing or parental favor. At all costs, our parents sought to keep up appearances. They got what they wanted then. Everyone now recognizes them for who they truly are.